save some tires because might not want to see if we can let it on board with one of the drivers a little bit further back here tonight because once he's done, there's going to be a little bit of an indication that we should have tires on the road. This is a racetrack number 6, which is quite a bit of tire. And so now everyone of these drivers has gone off the road and we have
it's going to be a blast, and my gosh, can we not wait for that one.
Race fans, we welcome you to the World Center of Racing here at Daytona International Superspeedway. I'm Andre Grandbush, joined for the first time by Doug Burns. He heard that joke already. And we are getting ready for a lot of these drivers to roll off and get ready for 160 laps of action here at this plate track. It's going to be a lot of fun. As always, we got our weather conditions up on the screen, 74 degrees, and of course, it's only going to get cooler as the sun goes down, and you're going to get a little bit more grip, so that can make things pretty interesting. 10 miles an hour of wind, and normally I'd say the wind isn't much of a factor, but I'll tell you what, Doug, these are the kinds of tracks where wind does matter. If you got that tailwind coming down the backstretch, that can help you save a little bit of fuel. It can definitely come into play later on, or if you have it in your face, that can make it a little bit more difficult to conserve and a little bit more difficult to get those runs that you need. So these plate tracks, man, they offer a lot of different challenges that you don't see at other tracks.
They definitely do. And these Cup cars, they even with the high downforce package, they're not settled. That wind does come into play a little bit. Just going through the turns, it can catch the car, get it a little bit wiggly, and things can get really, really interesting out there. So I think it'll be a great race. I think we'll probably see a little bit less wind once the sun goes down. But, you know, as often said, once the sun goes down, things really, really start to heat up.
They absolutely do, and of course we're going to see a lot of bump drafting, I'm sure, as the laps wind down and the sun goes down. Think about bump drafting, it can be a bit of a risk in and of itself. I mean, I'm seeing a lot of Chevrolets out in the out in the field. And of course, we all know they got that kind of pointed nose, which makes bump drafting a little difficult. One wrong bump can definitely be cause for disaster here at these tracks. So just a game of awareness, making sure that your every move is perfect. And of course, these drivers, I've been watching them in practice. They have been kind of working together. They'll park at the end of pit road and they'll wait for other drivers to come up so they can exit together and get a little bit of experience racing in the pack. So tell me, Doug, how much does practice and an experience in the pack really come into play here?
It's huge, and especially the practice aspect of it. You talk about those guys meeting on pit road. That's when they find out, hey, this is the guy I can work with. This is the guy that we work well together. He's better at pulling. I'm better at pushing. And when it gets late in the race, knowing who you can count on, and you've got to find 2 or 3 different guys. So you're constantly working through that pack. And that makes things really beneficial for everybody, but can also get a little bit sketchy, especially if you don't find the person you're looking for and you didn't practice around somebody. That can get extremely exciting too, especially with that bump draft you mentioned. If you bump somebody wrong or they bump you wrong, it can be disaster.
You're absolutely right, and it does pay to have friends. I mean, the bigger the pack, the faster the cars are going to go. You're going to have less air resistance flowing over those cars, slowing them down. So you want to have as many friends out there as possible, but what I find kind of fascinating about our Soda Wars 400 is that, this plate race is pretty late in the year. We're on race 26 out of 36, and at the beginning of the year, the Daytona 500, I feel like everybody's kind of on good terms. It's a new season, fresh year. Nobody's really grumpy with each other, and they're more willing to work together. But now we've been racing together 26 times, 25 times prior to this, and there's been some rivalries brewing. I know Jonathan Delaney and Cameron Stone, they kind of got into a bit of a spat in the Discord chat a couple days ago prior to this race, which is really fascinating because Jonathan Delaney is slated to go to Cameron Stone's new team next year, Silver Bullet Racing. And so they're kind of having a bit of a feud. And there's some other drivers in the field that aren't getting along too well. So it might be hard for these guys to find that teamwork that they need.
Definitely could be. It's worth noting that Delaney and Stone both are 2nd and 3rd in points coming into the night. So any aggravation on track could be problematic. Let's put it that way, especially at too hard of a bump down through the turn. And, you're going to see the bump drafting, and it's always on the straightaway, but late in the race, we might see that in the turns as well. And that can cause the guy in the front could get very, very frustrated by it. So there's a lot of unknowns when you come to Daytona and Talladega, and 26 races in, everybody's settled in. Everybody knows how the other guy drives or have a pretty good idea of it. They could get very frustrated, or they could get a lot of cooperation, and probably need to be a little bit nice on the mic tonight.
Absolutely. You don't want to say anything that gets the drivers around you hot-headed and not wanting to work with you. Now, another interesting thing about Jonathan Delaney is he is really going to need some help tonight because he is 7 points out of the regular season title going into this race. Bryson Hixenbach currently leads him by 7 points. And so plate tracks, Jonathan Delaney, he's pretty good at them. Last year, I believe he got a couple wins at these plate tracks. This year, however, hasn't really found the success that he had before. Dustin Hall won the spring Talladega race, and I remember watching that. I wasn't commentating that one. It was my birthday weekend, and I may or may not have been a little inebriated watching the race rather than commentating it. And Dustin Hall put on a heck of a show that night. I mean, he was riding around mid-pack in the action all night long, but then we got to that checkered flag, and boom, there it was. He just shot up through the field, got the last lap pass, took the win. And so Jonathan Delaney, he's going to have some tight competition if he wants to try to edge out Bryson for that regular season championship.
It's definitely going to be a close one here tonight, and Bryson has obviously been a little bit more consistent this season. He's finished every race, or 24 races to Jonathan's 21.
Yeah, Bryson, that's one thing about him. He's painfully consistent. And really, whenever you look through his results and you look at he had a bad race a few weeks ago, generally anytime he has a bad race, it comes down to hardware failure. He's had some issues with his monitor turning off in the past. Like last season at Vegas, that was one of the worst results I can recall for Bryson, where he just had to pull off the track because he couldn't see anything. But generally, as long as all the equipment is working as intended, he is painfully consistent. And it's just been tough for John because, and I don't say this in a bad way, but John kind of is a wreckers or checkers kind of driver. He's going to win the race, or he's going to bring home a crumpled up number 9 machine. And, that works out for getting into the playoffs and sealing yourself in to that top 16 early on. But when it comes to the regular season championship, you got to be a little more consistent than that, as the drivers are now gridding up and the pace truck is getting ready to finally roll off once everybody has got onto pit road. What are you expecting to see in this race tonight, Doug? What are you looking forward to?
I really look forward in these races. That first 5 laps is really, really interesting. You see guys working their way around the track, trying to find who they want to work with. You'll just about guaranteed see a group drop off the back and form their own little pack back there to try and stay safe. And you see a group of guys come charging to the front, and then it settles in mid-race is pretty consistent. Everybody kind of stays where they are, just trying to save their stuff and make it to the end. That last 25, 20 laps, that's where things get really, really exciting for these guys. And that's when we start to see a lot of side-by-side, a lot of 3 and 4 wide, and it gets a little bit dicey out there.
Absolutely. Now, I made a little bit of a mistake on my end. We didn't go through the starting grid, so I'm going to try to get through this as quickly as we can. Row 1, Jonathan Delaney and Josh R. Ward, one of the best qualifying efforts out of that number 67 machine this year. Both drivers in the 47.2 range. Row behind them, Cameron Stone, Brian Branham. Behind them, you got Raymond Root, Devin Medeiros. Then looking a little further back, you got Kyle Amon and Jason S. Taylor, Kevin Steele and Matt White, Patrick Much and Dylan Kritz, although I believe Patrick is out of this event. He did not grid, I don't think. Adam Benefiel and Sean O'Brien behind them, Brandon Pierce and Cody Strom, Lucas Hoitzma, Randy Drumhiller. Running out your top 20, it's going to be Jason Chambers and Bryce Hoffman. But we are getting ready to go green as they are in 3 and 4. This race is about to heat up.
Yeah, definitely. Things are about to get really, really interesting. And as I mentioned, that first 5 laps can tell the tale. There will be a big one at some point. It doesn't matter how many cars you have on track at Daytona. There's going to be a big one. It's not if, but when. Green flag out, and they are down and away.
Jonathan Delaney, the control car, getting a great start there on the inside. He jumped out a little bit there. Now, at plate tracks, getting that jump isn't always the biggest advantage. Sometimes, if you get too far away, that just lets the driver behind you get that draft and build up a bigger run. So we'll have to see how making moves like that tends to play out throughout the night. Right now, Jonathan Delaney holding the lead fairly easily. Cameron Stone, his future team owner, right behind him, being pushed by the number 67. We got a lot of single file up until back in 5th place. Then you've got Kyle Amon right alongside Devin Medeiros in that 217. Now, Devin, he likes these plate tracks. He's done pretty well here before. He tends to rock that outside lane just like he's doing right now, so he's going to be a driver to watch for sure. But Kevin Steele, that's another driver I'm watching. He is the Daytona 500 winner from this season. The Daytona 500 was an absolutely wild finish. We had cars flying through the air, barrel rolling through the grandstands. It was a complete mess, but through it all, the Iron Man, Kevin Consistency Steele, how many nicknames can we give the guy, was able to come out on top. So he's going to be a driver that I'm keeping my eye on.
Just noticed, looks like driver Andrew Russo went to pit road on lap 1. Not sure what happened there, but he is already on pit road. We'll have to wait and see if he comes back off. Did Cody Stone also hit pit road? I think he might have. That has got to be a strategy play right there, as you've got a group already broke off the back as well. So there's some different strategies obviously being worked here early.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Every time you come to these tracks, I feel like every driver feels safe in a different place. And I'm not exactly sure which we all agree with, but some drivers, that their idea is there's going to be a big one, like you said. It's going to happen. It's not if, it's when. And I want to be out front. I want to be in front of it when it happens so that I'm not collected. Other drivers say, well, I'm going to hang back because the first 100 or some odd laps of this race don't really matter that much. So I can hang back, and if anything happens, it'll be way up in front of me. I'll have plenty of time to react to it. And that's the way that they kind of keep themselves safe. Really, the place you don't want to be is right there in the middle of the pack, right there in the action. And that's what these drivers who have broken off are avoiding. Now, the problem is, and I'm sure you know as well as I do, Doug, when you break off from the main pack like that, if you don't have more cars in the lead pack, you are always at risk of losing their draft and continually falling back. And if you give it enough time, you might find yourself going a lap down.
Yeah, I've seen that happen more than once. You got to have a big enough group to at least maintain an equal speed to them, or you have to get hooked on to a pack as they come back by. And if not, you're going to be in serious trouble. The difference in time can be a matter of a couple of seconds per lap, and that can mean the end of a race for you. Even without being involved in a wreck, if you can't stay on the lead lap, maintain pace, that could mean the end of the night for you.
It absolutely could. And now I'm looking towards the front of the pack. And I'm noticing Brian Branham has worked his way right into 4th place there. He's nestled himself into the single file. He's 1 car on track behind Cameron Stone. Now, last time Brian ran a race, I believe, was Sonoma. He's been kind of off and on in terms of when he shows up to race. But back at Sonoma, he had a rough race, and he may or may not have gotten under the skin of a few drivers, and Cameron Stone was one of them. Cameron Stone, after the race, I talked to him candidly, and he had a few words for that 74 machine. So I'm curious to see how well are they going to work together tonight. They're going to put that behind them and move on. I mean, you got to think that was weeks ago. You know, forgive and forget, move on. But as a driver, sometimes those grudges carry on for quite a while.
Yeah, there's always that old saying that race car drivers have to have short memories and always be looking to the future, but that is almost never the case. You see it in the real world. NASCAR drivers carry grudges for years. How long did Dale Earnhardt and Terry Labonte carry on their grudge match? So, you know, it's got to be in at least one of their minds. It is lingering there as they, but right now, everybody single file for the most part in that front pack. So that at least gives them a 1-car buffer for the moment. Hopefully that buffer kind of stays there for a little bit. And hopefully they've both forgotten the incident at Sonoma, but you never know, and we may not know until the end of this thing.
Absolutely. Sometimes I feel like the drivers don't know how they're feeling. You know, they got that grudge in the back of their mind, but they're thinking, well, I am still angry, but the benefits of working together can outweigh the grudge. They kind of got to figure it out for themselves and ponder on it, which they got plenty of time to do as they ride single file. And, of course, our stages are going to be at lap 50 and lap 100. And I tell you what, Doug, can they go 50 laps on a tank of gas?
Somebody at the very back of the field might be able to. I don't see anybody up front, and if they make it, it'll be extremely close on fuel. And I imagine you'll see a guy like John Delaney, if he's after he's got some laps led, gained some points, drop to the back of that pack would be the smart move there. Let him save some fuel and make the smart strategy play. And that's one of the biggest things. The 2 biggest things for Daytona is always A, stay out of the big one, and B, make the right strategy calls, because the wrong strategy call, and it doesn't matter if you avoid the big one or not, you're in the wrong place at the wrong time and have no advantage. So stage breaks definitely help if you make a mistake, but you can only make that mistake one time.
Absolutely. That's a mistake that you can't afford to make multiple times over. And, you know, the green flag pit stops at these plate tracks, they're always chaotic because it's such a wide open, especially at Daytona. You've got all of that tarmac down there. It's a wide open pit road entry that kind of invites you to try and jump the guy in front of you. You know, you got a car in front of you by a couple car lengths. You're thinking, I can outbrake him. I can go in there 20 mile an hour faster, and then I'll slow down right before I get to that score loop. And you have confidence in your car that it's going to stop. But I mean, by then, your tires are worn, you're sliding around, you could get wheel hop, and it's easy to find yourself speeding down pit road, smoking those tires, and potentially even spinning out if you come in a little too hot, just getting greedy with the track position.
Oh, definitely. Plus, you got to think when you're coming to pit road, you have got rid of all the weight that was over the back end of that car because you burned off all that fuel. So it just makes it that much more trickier. And like you said, you get down in there too hot, it's very, very easy to spin on old tires. And they won't change tires a lot tonight. Some of these guys probably won't change left sides at all, but it's definitely an interesting situation when they come to pit road under green flag conditions, and they have to come down in groups. And if that group isn't together, then you have the issue of, hey, you're trying to check up as you drop to the entrance to pit road, and another car may not realize you're dropping or just may not be paying enough attention, might have spaced out for a second, and they don't move up and they hit your back end. I've seen countless wrecks going to pit road like that. So green flag stops here at Daytona, extremely tricky.
And you bring up a really valid point that I think a lot of viewers at home may not realize about these Daytona and Talladega style tracks. When you say that they might have spaced out for a minute, this track is unlike so many others in that it's wide open. You're never letting off the throttle, or at the very most, you're keeping a consistent throttle input if you're running, 3/4 throttle behind a guy in the draft. But either way, you're not braking, you're not hitting you're not shifting, you're not doing really anything. You're just kind of lightly turning the wheel in and out of the corner, holding it wide open for the most part. And when you get single file like this, and when the green flag run goes on for a long time, it can be mentally exhausting, and it's easy to kind of let yourself zone out and sort of go into autopilot. But of course, when you're going 200 miles an hour behind the wheel of a several thousand-pound machine, zoning out isn't exactly the thing you want to do.
No, I've done several endurance races over the years and 100% races, and it's always Daytona and Talladega that your mind starts to check out on. If you're doing the 24 hours of Daytona, you're on the road course. You're constantly braking, shifting, and your mind has to stay sharp. But here, you're like you said, you're wide open. You might touch the brake just to get off somebody's bumper. You have to keep an eye on the temperature gauge and move up and down a little bit. But for the most part, it just it becomes monotonous while you're single file, and everybody needs to stay single file as long as possible just to keep the race green. So it can guys can start losing focus, getting tired, whatever may happen in the car, and then that's when accidents happen.
Absolutely. Now, just an update on one of the drivers, Chad Edwards, driving for LMM, the number 4 machine. He has disconnected from the session. So something has happened to that number 4. Not entirely sure what. I didn't quite catch it on my camera feed. I don't think we caught it on the broadcast. I'm not I think he might have just come down. It sounds like he just came down pit road and left for some reason. Perhaps something came up in real life. So hopefully everything's all right with Chad. You never want to have to drop out of a race this close to the playoffs, but hopefully everything's all right. And you mentioned the single file being a little bit more monotonous than when you get in the pack and you go 2-3 wide. So for your money, Doug, when do you, if you're a driver in the seat right now, when do you turn off this patience and you turn up the aggression? At what point in this race?
10 to go is usually the last 10% of the race is usually my number. I look at how many laps. So with this 160 laps, I'd start looking for partners or who I'm going to work with at about 16 to go, and then about 10 to go, I'm going to say, okay, let's start weaving our way to the front. And hopefully by then, everybody's going to start cranking it up and making their way forward. And that's as people start jumping out of line, making moves, that's the best time to get a run. That's the best time to grab some momentum off somebody and bring your teammate with you. But also, that's also the most dangerous time because everybody's jumping out of line. And it definitely, you can get into somebody if you've got too much of a run. It's extremely sketchy, but man, you wait till as late as possible to make your run, and you definitely don't want to be up front until about 1 lap to go. It's easy to block for 1 lap. Any more than that, it gets a little bit dangerous up there, and somebody's going to get a run on you.
Absolutely. If you lead for too long and the drivers behind you want to take that lead, eventually they're going to go 3, maybe even 4 wide. And, Jonathan Delaney up there in the number 9, he can block 1 lane. He might even be able to block 2. But you get 3 lanes of cars, 3 runs, trying to make it. You just can't block them all. There comes a point where you have to accept that this is your position. They're going to get the run, and trying to block them would just result in a wreck. I mean, we've seen that in real life a lot of times. I'm not going to name any names, any real-life drivers, but there's a few drivers pretty notorious for the late blocks. And, just kind of comes a point where you got to be like, okay, they got the run. There's nothing I can do. So you're absolutely right. You do not want to be leading too early. You want to get that lead with about 1 to go, maybe a lap and a half if you're bold. But it's rough for sure.
Yeah, and the other thing too to bear in mind here is we're starting at the end of daylight. We'll end at night. Early on in a race here, you've got to stay on the bottom just to keep the momentum because it's all down there. But after a while, after some guys start moving up and after it cools off and you start laying some tire rubber down up on that high line, that's when that high line actually picks up speed. The high line is always faster, both front straightaway and the back straightaway. You're a lot faster running up high, but through the corners, you're running faster at the bottom. So some of these guys will start taking advantage of that. They'll hop to the high side. They'll get the run, and if they get far enough ahead, they drop to the bottom for the turns, and then they can move back up for the straightaways, and that is the safest way to do it. But you also got to be careful and make sure you're clear when you drop to the bottom line. And once that outside line starts working, I think that's when things will really start to heat up a little bit. You see a lot of these drivers already moving up a little bit in the corners. That's when once they feel a little bit more grip and see a little bit more speed up there, they're going to start moving up, and that's when things will start getting a little sketchy.
And you are absolutely correct in that. Now, to the viewer at home, they might wonder, well, how could putting rubber down and having a cooler track with no grip, how could that make a difference on a track where you're wide open? But One thing that the viewer at home has to understand is that these cars, especially in the pack, have so little downforce because the cars around you are just deflecting every last bit of air that you could possibly get. When you make a move up on the high side, especially up in the dust and marbles, it is very easy for the car to break out sideways. And if that happens and you're door to door with somebody, that leaves you almost no time to react. Even if you counter steer and you straighten your own car out, by the time you do so, you've probably made contact with the cars beneath you. And at that point, it's a giant game of, a very expensive giant game of pinball. Drivers bouncing off one another. You do not want to get loose, but it's a thing that's very possible to do. I mean, even the force feedback in the steering wheel through the simulator at these tracks, you go to turn the wheel and you don't feel that much resistance. Really, the wheel is just kind of floating there, and any minuscule input is enough to turn that wheel. It's a tough thing to do, to try to make a move up top before the temps have gone down.
It looks like they're going to get a little bit of rubber up on the high side as they come down the back straightaway, as the leaders come around a couple of lap cars, and I'm guessing this is some of the guys we saw pitting earlier. That's another thing that'll come into play as some of these guys do try and make some green flag pit stops. They're going to have to move about on the track. Everybody coming with momentum, even though those two cars were together in the draft, they're going to come flying. Everybody's going to come flying up on them 10 to 15 miles an hour faster than what they can do with just two cars. And that, you've got cars that have to move up to the high line. You got cars that are going to get stuck up there. And these guys are going to be working in that high side of the track. And as you mentioned, that dust that goes up, the simulator simulates tire chunks coming off. You can see it when you're in the car. You see tire chunks coming off. They get up there on the high side, and when they're three wide, that high side car can get into the marbles, and it can send them around too.
Absolutely, they can. Now, if you're a lap car, right, and you see the pack coming up on you 15 miles an hour quicker, for the viewer at home, you know, if you're a driver and that's happening, what do you think is the best course of action for that? As we go ahead and take a look at a replay.
Best course of action is always to go to the high side. Pretty much what they as we get a little wiggle up into the wall and a bit of a wall ride. Looks like we'll have a car on pit road here in just a moment. He took heavy damage.
Yeah, that was the one that the simulator thought his front end had come off. Now, of course, that's the number 86 machine, I believe. That's a tough hit, and you know, at these tracks, these plate tracks, it's not a good thing to get any sort of aero damage, but it's even worse to get engine damage, and he did hit the front end on that wall pretty heavy. So you find yourself down just a few horsepower, and it's going to be real difficult. And there's another angle that you can see. Looks like the 89 just made contact with the door there, then up to the 59, up into that outside wall, and it was just all she wrote from there. Luckily, the 59 didn't seem to get slowed down too much by that. He's going to have the stage to kind of bring him back up to the pack and bunch the field up so long as he can stay on the lead lap. But he's going to have to stay on the lead lap for quite some time. Out of 50. And as I would assume, some of these drivers, you might see him come down pit road about halfway or so. That would be it'd be about lap 25. Before we get into this pit sequence, I see some fans in the chat. Logan asking for some crank it ups. So for a lap or two, how about we go on board and make some noise?
And we come back very quickly as we're starting to see some pit stops come in. It looks like Brian Branham and Raymond Root and Josh Ward all came to pit road. So the first 3-car pit stop already underway, and it looks like we're about to start seeing a whole lot more. This lead pack may be coming to pit road here before too much longer. We're about the halfway point before the stage break. That's about the perfect time. If you're not going to try and stretch it, if you don't think you can make it, splitting it halfway definitely the best way to go. Now, we'll have to wait and see. Does not look like anybody, a couple of guys looked down like they were going to come to pit road, but nobody else dives in this time. So just those 3 cars for the moment have come to pit road. We'll have to wait and see. Do we see any more guys start as the next couple of laps go on? We should start seeing the pack break up.
Absolutely. I mean, we're on lap 25. That is right about halfway. A lot of these drivers, just for the symmetry of it, they're going to come down about halfway. It doesn't necessarily matter when you pit at a track like this. It's more of who you pit with. You know, making sure you have a pack, making sure that you have enough fuel to make it to the end of the stage, which they will have more than enough. So really, they could pit anywhere between lap 25 up to, I would say, lap 40. But a lot of drivers, they just want to split it there in half, and we do have some cars headed down pit road, it seems like. The leaders, Jonathan Delaney, Cameron Stone, and whoa, Jonathan getting a little sideways. I don't know, Doug, you think that's a speeding penalty?
It's going to be close if it's not, but I think he was still sideways at the commitment cone, so I'm guessing he may not have got it woed up yet, so we'll have to wait and see, but it looked very, very, very close if he didn't.
And we got more drama on pit road. The 65 and the 46 have gone around, and the 46 can't find his pit stall. He doesn't know where he is. He just pulled into 2 separate stalls. Neither of them were correct, so now he's just going to continue on down pit road. Absolutely disastrous for that 46 team.
And it does look like Delaney did get a penalty there because he is still sitting on pit road. I noticed something. A couple of guys actually took left sides only. That's a peculiar strategy to see here, but I'm guessing those guys that took left sides only, they had to have, they're thinking that's the only time they're going to take left sides tonight. So be interesting to see how things play out with the tire strategy tonight as well. As you know, these guys have put in a lot of extra testing this week.
Oh, absolutely. You want to get your car trimmed out absolutely the way you want it. I mean, for the viewer at home, and we do have a replay of Jonathan Delaney coming into pit road, you see he started out pretty good. The transition from the banking down to the apron was fine. But then as he gets a little bit closer to pit road, he's got some cars behind him, and right there you can see the car start to kind of get unsettled. And then there's the lockup right there with Cameron Stone right behind him. And it looks like he might have touched a tire to the grass. Maybe that was a penalty, unsafe entry. Even if he wasn't speeding, I think that still would have been unsafe entry. So rough for the driver who's led pretty much the entire race up until that point. But I always say, if you're going to make a mistake, do it early in the race, because then you've afforded yourself plenty of time to try to make up for it.
Yeah, definitely. And that is chaos on pit road as you get one car trying to get to his pit stall. He cuts across the nose of the, 65 car. And yeah, they end up both nose first and then having to try and figure out where to go on pit road. And you know, even if you get that car turned around immediately, just getting turned around on pit road can cause a lot of confusion, both for you in your car trying to find your pit stall and for anybody around you who can't see what they need to see to get to their pit stalls.
Yeah, it can be very disorienting. I mean, it's hard enough to find your pit board as it is. I know some drivers are actually rocking kind of custom pit boards this week, ones that they're not necessarily used to, because this is the Soda Wars 400. So a lot of these drivers rocking soda-based paint schemes, such as the 38 on your screen. That's the Mountain Coca-Cola car. Absolutely cursed vehicle, if I must say. And so they got different pit boards, maybe different colors, and sometimes you change it up, and then you kind of have a brain fart. You think, oh yeah, my pit board's always white. Oh wait, now it's red, and you kind of get a little bit disoriented. And then of course, if you spin out, that only adds to that. As we go to our 3-wide TV multi-cam, of course, top of your screen, that was some 2-wide action, and down below, that is the driver who's currently leading the race. We mentioned Brandon Pierce in that 38 machine. Of course, Team Conti having plenty of success on these plate tracks. Dustin Hall, like I mentioned, winning the spring Talladega race. Those guys definitely have these tracks figured out. I'm curious to see how Pierce shakes out. He's really kind of stretching the fuel here. He hasn't really bothered to pit, but one thing I'm noticing, Doug, is that there's not much of a pack around Brandon. And if he can't find one soon, and he's coming down pit road pretty much with just a couple other cars, or possibly even by himself, that could be really detrimental.
Yeah, he was by himself for quite some time out there, and I gotta say, these two guys came flying by him in just the blink of an eye, and now he's all alone, still out front, and he's got a 7-second lead, but that 7-second lead is going to diminish very, very quickly once the cars behind him all get hooked up. It looks like there's about a 5-car pack behind him led by Jason Chambers, and we've gone from 7 seconds to 6.7 and it just keeps dropping. So he's got to make a call pretty quick. He hasn't been to pit road. He's going to have to figure something out, or he's going to get both run over and left behind.
Absolutely, and you can look at the lap time differentials there on the bottom of your screen. That's Pierce versus Chambers, the car that's behind him. Lap 26, Chambers was 1.9 seconds faster. Almost every lap since then, Chambers has been 2 seconds faster, with the exception of lap 30, where he's 1.7. But any way you look at it, any way you cut it, with that draft, he is just absolutely cutting into this lead, and it's only going to be a couple of laps before he's up there.
Yeah, they're picking up a couple of cars. They just picked up another car. We'll see if he can hang in the draft here. But if not, it's a 3-car pack versus about an 8-car group behind them. So things are about to get really bad if Brandon doesn't make some sort of move soon. He's got to hope for a caution or something as Jason Chambers leads his pack back towards the front.
Yeah, he's going to have to hope for one, I would say. But the thing is, right now, at this stage in the race, it's definitely probably one of the safer times because everybody's so separated from that pit sequence. They've kind of formed it off into little packs. And so you don't really expect to see many cars wrecking. And even if we do have somebody spinning out or getting in the wall like we saw with the number 86, it may not necessarily be worthy of a caution. It could be that we could stay green anyhow. So things looking a little bit dire for Pierce right now. But, team contact. Whoa, we got a car sideways down the track, back up the track. That's, I believe, RJ Root in the number 8. And he is going to spin it backwards down onto the apron. No caution yet. He's going to have to put it through the grass to get facing the right way. But I just mentioned it. Single car spin, no caution to save that 38 car.
No, and that is a bit of a shock because he was backwards up high, but he managed to get clear of the track. And once you're down under the yellow lines, you're kind of considered safe and out of bounds. So, he's here comes the replay. He just got way behind. Might have gotten a little tap there, but he definitely impacted the cars around him. Everybody had to check up, and everybody had to try and get clear. Impressive job by the drivers around him to not get caught in that. And looks like we have the leader coming to pit road finally.
And I'll tell you what, the number 6 in that incident with the number 8 was incredibly lucky. If the number 8 had caught him just a few inches further back on the car, that would have almost been guaranteed to turn the number 6 up into the outside wall, and it would have been a lot of damage. Fortunately, he hit him right square in the door, and the 6 was able to just kind of bounce off and keep going without too much momentum loss. And also, you can kind of take a little bit of damage on the doors. It's one of the areas of the car that, the airflow doesn't really affect. So if somebody beats in your door, you're not really losing out on any power or any aero that's going to hold you back later down the line.
Yeah, it's actually kind of funny. You can there's a couple places on the car where you can get a hit, you can take a little bit of damage, and it won't impact your handling or your speed. I've heard some guys say they actually try and scrape their right rear against the wall just right so that they have a little bit of an aero advantage because they shrink that back bumper just a little bit, and on that right side it helps. As here comes Jason Chambers to pit road, and the group he is with all coming to pit road now.
And it seems like, the number 30 car, he's around hard into the inside wall there on pit road. Doesn't look like too much damage, but again, I think you know as well as I do, Doug, sometimes the visual damage isn't a good representation of the actual damage. So we'll have to see how that car holds up. But, you mentioned, purposely trying to crunkle down that spoiler and, try to get that aero advantage so you have less drag. It really reminds me, as a Michael Waltrip fan, it really reminds me of the truck race where Michael Waltrip's rear spoiler on his truck just kind of fell over flat. It came unhinged and gave him a huge aero advantage. He went on to win that race. And I could definitely see some of those drivers try to replicate something like that here in the simulator because it is realistic enough here on iRacing that kind of thing works.
Yeah, as we get a replay of Jason Chambers diving to pit road, it looks like he just got in a little bit too hot and got a little too low. It looks like he might have gotten down there where some marbles collected on pit road entry, just got on the brakes too hard and As we mentioned earlier, less grip in the tires, less fuel on the back end. You can go around really easy. And he managed to get that thing turned around, but he'll have to work his way back towards the front after having a pretty decent run so far.
And it was nearly a Mark Martin situation there. He spun right where that inside pit wall kind of has that opening, the access road. And if you hit that, man, sometimes that'll do a lot of damage. I mean, in the case of Mark Martin in real life, that pit road wall went clean through his firewall behind his driver's seat. So something you definitely don't want to have happen. But the number 74, I believe that's Brian Branham, he is to the garage. He pulled off the track. Similar to Chad Edwards earlier in the night. I got to wonder why a lot of these drivers are doing that. It's, maybe some sort of penalty, and they feel that, like our producer pointed out, maybe a penalty, and they feel like they can't overcome that. I mean, at what point in this race does a penalty become something that you can no longer really overcome, Doug? I mean, what lap is like the breaking point?
Probably the green flag from the second stage break. That's when you reach a point where you just can't. There's no guarantee of a caution. There's nothing you can overcome. The other thing, you see a lot of these guys on the straightaway move out. The other possibility is a blown engine. These guys are tucked up under each other, and if you have too much tape on the car, or if you're just not paying attention to the heat, as you see some cars moving around on the straightaway, they're trying to get clean air over the nose of that car, get it cooled off, and keep it the right temperature. If you don't keep that nose clean a little bit, if you don't cool it off, you can blow an engine, and it does happen regularly at Daytona and Talladega.
That's a great point, and I mean, to add on to that as well, there's really only a few tracks on the circuit where you have to worry about your engine temp necessarily. And so a lot of these drivers, sometimes they got their field of view and their seat position for their camera set at a point where they can't really see, their light or their gauge for the heat. And they come to a plate track, they don't really think about it, and then they realize, oh man, I can't see that. And it's a very difficult thing to adjust on the fly, so some of these guys may just kind of be winging it. And you mentioned, when they step out like that, it's not because they're, just leaving for no reason. They're stepping out like that because they do have to cool these temps down. Now, I got to ask, Doug, do you think the engine temps will be a little bit more easy to manage once the sun goes down and overall the air just gets a little cooler?
Definitely will be. They'll still have to keep an eye on it, but as the sun goes down and the temperatures go down, it's a lot easier to get up, and you'll actually see these guys tuck in a little bit closer. They'll have a little bit more horsepower, and they can get in a little bit closer. That can cause its own problems, but you can definitely go a lot longer tucked up underneath somebody's nose, or up under somebody's spoiler, and keep your nose out of the air and get as much momentum as possible. You see that quite often when small groups get together, especially in the dark. They can start getting tighter up and gain some speed on an even bigger group that is not tucked up close enough. So this front group right now, they're keeping a little bit of a gap between each other. They're playing it kind of safe. A smaller group behind them, if they're tucked up close enough, they can start moving their way forward.
And if the viewers at home wonder why engine temps are so difficult to manage at these tracks, look no further than the graphic on the bottom right of your screen. These drivers are driving in excess of 200 miles an hour, and if you look at the RPM right beneath the tachometer there, they are running pretty much wound constantly at in excess of 8,000 RPM. And this is for hours at a time. This is a 160-lap race. Now, back when we had restrictor plates, our revs were a little bit lower at these plate tracks. I mean, you'd be in fourth gear and you'd be topping out at about 5,000-6,000 revs. Now we got tapered spacers, and you can wind those things up a little bit more. And pretty much everybody in this field is going to be running somewhere above 8,000, and that causes a ton, and I do mean a ton of heat. So when you get up behind somebody and there's no airflow to counteract that heat, it's very easy to find yourself smoking out of the windshield, smoking out of the hood, and having some issues.
Yeah, I have personally ran into that one or two times. You just, we mentioned it earlier, how your mind gets a little bit slowed down there. You kind of get into the rhythm and you forget to check everything. And you mentioned the gauge thing. Some of these guys, their field of view is set that they don't see it. Some people, like myself, I have to have a separate set of gauges up because of the way my setup is looking, and it does make a difference. If you forget to pull up gauges, or you forget to check that on a regular basis, I try to remember to check it about every other lap on the back straightaway, but not everybody will remember to do that every time, and after 160 laps, that's a hard thing to keep checking all the time. And another thing about it is, having the 50 lap stage breaks, it'll help kind of break some of that monotony for these guys, but it also brings up the potential for damage and the big one on the restarts.
Absolutely. Now on the screen there, before we swapped over, there we go. We're looking at the number 9 and the number 57. Now Cameron Stone is our race leader. Jonathan Delaney is the last car on the lead lap right in front of Cam. Now we only have about 7 laps to go in this stage. So the question arises, does Cameron Stone, I mean, the way I see it, I take that back. It's not even a question. I think for Cameron Stone, this is pure benefit. He's got a driver in front of him that is going to be his driver on his team next year, and he can ride behind him, let him use the draft, kind of help keep that lead. And at the same time, he's pushing John, he's keeping him on the lead lap, so he doesn't have to rely on the wave around and forego a pit stop should he choose to take it. So really, they got a bit of a symbiotic relationship. Cam's helping John, John's helping Cam, and it would be ideal for both these guys if they finish out the stage exactly where they're running.
Definitely would, and John is helping save some fuel for the car behind them, even though they're going to all come to pit road and all get that pit stop. Even 1 gallon less on the refill is going to could save a second, could save several seconds. So there's several different benefits to letting him run up front. Plus, John was out front early on in the race and pulled that pack around. He's obviously extremely fast here, pulling the field. So it'll be it's a really wise move to keep this going the way it is, at least for the time being, unless somebody makes a bold move behind him and tries to take that stage break win.
Absolutely, and the dynamics don't go away either, because if you look right behind Cameron Stone, that's Cameron Stone's current team owner over at Apex. That is Kevin Steele in that number 24 running second. Now they're teammates, so you'd think they'd work together. However, let's just say there has been some trouble in paradise over at Apex ever since Cameron announced the start of his team, Silver Bullet Racing. Kevin Steele felt a little bit betrayed, we'll say, that Cameron Stone decided to leave after just 1 season with the team. And they've kind of gotten into it. They've had their spats in the chat, and they've had their amount of trash talk. And the way I understand it, they're not really racing as teammates right now. They're racing as a team, sure, but those two, a little bit of bad blood between them.
That does make for we talked about on-track drama and past incidents coming back out tonight, and that is one of those that could come back up. It could be, my teammate needs a little help. He needs to get pushed to the front, but I have the opportunity here to jump to the front, and I'm going to take it and let him go to the high side and let him get hung out to dry. That could be something that comes up both for a stage win and for the race win, and that could mean the difference between winning the regular season or finishing second or third. So a lot of different things at play here, and there is always a lot of drama during the NASCAR silly season. Coming to the end of the regular season here, sounds like we've got quite a bit of drama going on here as well.
Absolutely. I mean, to compare it to a real life situation, obviously in real life we're all aware that Brad Keselowski is leaving Penske. He'll be going to another team there, and he I noticed he started racing the Penske drivers a little bit differently after his departure was announced. He started racing Joey Logano, his former teammate, a little bit rougher. And you got to think, maybe in his mind, he's thinking, yeah, Joey's my teammate now, but in 6 months, he's not my teammate anymore. So what do I care? And so I feel like that's kind of a similar thing we're seeing here with Apex, where Kevin Steele, given the opportunity to get around Stone and maybe, hang him out to dry and feed him to the wolves, Kevin Steele's probably thinking, well, he's my teammate now, but he won't be.
It definitely could come to play. We've seen it in the real world, and it will happen in these bigger leagues all the time. You're switching teams or just the on-track personalities. And there's times where you get 2 very fast drivers that are teammates, but they just don't get along, and that can come into play as well as we come down to the end of the first stage. It could get interesting. That lead pack, though, there's only a couple of lead lap cars in there, and as you mentioned, John Delaney on the last car on the lead lap. being out front of it. So could come into play here with just that small group. Everybody could play nice, or it could get really crazy right about now.
It absolutely could. The backstretch is where the magic happens. Now, as per usual, as we're on the white flag of this stage, we're going to wait for 10 cars to complete the completion of lap 50, at which point the admins will throw the stage caution, and the rest of the field will be frozen wherever that caution came out. So that's kind of interesting with these plate tracks, because sometimes you're racing for position, you're half a lap down, and then, the caution comes out, and did I get him? Did I get the position? And you don't know until it tells you where to line up. So that's something to watch for these guys further back. But we are coming out of turn 4. And it looks like somebody tried to make something happen, but Cameron Stone is going to secure the stage win, and Jonathan Delaney is going to hold on to that lead lap.
And I was a little bit surprised to see the 53 move up the track and try and make something happen, and nobody behind him went with him. But hey, there you have it. Everybody gets through and clear, and we should see a caution.
Yep, just waiting for a few more cars. Of course, we did have quite a bit of separation. And once that yellow flag flies, they're going to bring them down pit road, get 4 fresh Goodyears. There's the caution right there. And now we're going to see if your theory was right there, Doug. You said, maybe these guys are going to take one set of left sides at the start. And I got to agree. I think that's the case, because they do have a tire limit. They got 8 sets of tires. So if they can pretty much exclusively use those 8 sets of tires on the right-hand side, that basically affords them the opportunity to pit at every caution they're going to get. Unless we have an absurd amount of cautions, and I'm talking, above 10 at the end of this thing, none of these drivers, assuming they only take one set of lefts, should really have to worry about running out.
Definitely not. And here, you don't even have to change tires every pit stop. Some of these guys will come to pit road and will make the decision to take fuel only. And some of that's just a strategy move. You need the track position. You don't change tires. You just take as much fuel as you need, no more. You're paying really close attention. I guarantee you there's some guys in the field doing a lot of calculations right now as they get ready to come to pit road. They're thinking, okay, how much fuel do I have? How much fuel do I need to max this? And they're going to go as little as possible if they can get away with not changing tires. I would not be surprised to see a few guys not take tires at all here.
I agree there. And another thing these drivers have to kind of take into account as well is this second stage will technically, although it's the same lap count, it'll technically use a little bit less fuel, because caution laps do count. So we're going to burn a few laps under caution while everybody pits, gets their car sorted out. And so really it'll be a few laps less worth of fuel that they're going to have to conserve for this stage. And maybe gives them a little bit more wiggle room when it comes to strategy should they come down under green.
Yeah, and you are always thinking about that green flag pit stop. You have to. The stops under caution, those are great, as we see a couple of guys not getting tires at all, and a couple of guys getting in a little bit crazy into pit road. Some of these guys are not getting tires at all. They're just topping off on fuel. Some guys taking 2, some guys taking 4. And a lot of that's going to come down to communication with your teammates and the people you're running with. What are they doing? And you're going to try and do the same, both under caution and once you go green flag pit stops. You have to have the same kind of tire strategy with the people you pit with, or you're going to lose that help that you have. And you have to have that help here. And now that everybody's packed back up, you're definitely going to need to cooperate with anybody you can, anybody you're working with, until the pack breaks back up.
Well said. That is absolutely the case here. And again, it's just one of those crazy elements that really, there's 2 tracks on the schedule that you got to think about that kind of thing. And this is one of them. So they got to be on the ball with that. They got to have that help. They got to make sure they're conversing. And there's a little bit of strategy in who you conversate with as well, because unlike real life, these drivers have the opportunity to speak to one another. Now, of course, in real life, there was that small period of time, I think it was like 1 or 2 years, where the drivers could communicate with each other in real life at the plate tracks, but that was done away with very quickly for obvious reasons. But in iRacing, you can pretty much go to driver's chat and you can talk to anybody you want to talk to. Now, that can be beneficial, because you can say, if you got the 20 car behind you and you want to push, you could say, hey, we're going to try to make something happen on this high side. Come with me. But it's also a bit of a risk, because you're not just announcing your plans to the guy that you're working with. You're announcing them to the world. You might as well have a megaphone hanging out in your car, screaming to the whole wide world that, yeah, I'm going to make a move up top. And when you do that, everybody around you has a chance to try and get ready and prepare for that, to try and compensate.
Yeah, that's why you got a lot of these guys that are in their team chats and looking through your, groups of 2, groups of 3. And I imagine we're going to see a few situations once these groups get reconnected that they're going to be working together again, especially when they get to about halfway through this. At about 25 laps after the green flag, we'll start seeing some pit stops again, and they're going to be talking that strategy in their chat. They're going to be trying to work with the people that they are in a team chat with, so they don't announce it to the world. But a lot of times there is no way around it, and you just have to announce what you're going to do and hope for the best. Sometimes it works out, and sometimes there's somebody that says, hey, I can block them, get to the front, and get away with what they're planning, and that's where the chaos comes in. But the excitement's going to be here in a minute. I think it might get a little bit more crazy this time on the green flag. The first 5 laps might get a little sketchy.
I would have to agree there. The first few laps are always going to be the most chaotic. Everybody's trying to find their place in the line. It's kind of like, when everybody is single file, and you're trying to find your slot in line, it's like trying to find a parking spot at the mall on steroids. You're going 200 miles an hour, and if you make one wrong move, you could cause upwards of 10 cars to be involved in an incident. So it's tough. It's chaotic. Once they find their line, it'll be all right. But the green flag is flying. And I say for this restart, as Cameron Stone dives back to the lead in front of his teammate, Kevin Steele, why don't we make some noise? And we are back from bringing some noise. I apologize. I got the wrong memo. I thought it was make some noise, but I was looking at the sticky note wrong, I guess. But we're back, and Cameron Stone is still leading the way. He's down there on that double yellow line, as he's going to remain for, I would assume, most of this stage up until the green flag stop. And Kevin Steele behind him, trying to give him a push. And I'm looking through the top 10. One standout that I'm noticing, that number 21 machine, Bryce Hoffman, currently running 9th. He's had some rough races this year, and he will be retiring from racing in the league next year. But right now, that 21 car is looking pretty good, and this could be a chance to really go out on top if they can maintain this position and get a good finish here at Daytona.
You know what's interesting about that? I retired from sim racing in 05, 06, somewhere in there, and I'm back. It's like anything else. If you do it and you enjoy it, you're not retired for long from it. So I wouldn't be surprised to see to hear that he comes back before too much longer. You never know, but definitely something to watch as time goes on. Meanwhile, it looks like that group, the lead group, is quite large, and I'm seeing a couple of guys who back off just a little bit and see how quickly they can run up to the car in front of them. And it seems to be around that 9th and 10th place. Bryce Hoffman and Jonathan Delaney both have done it just a little bit, and as has Preston McRae. Could get very, very interesting here in a few moments. As we know, Jonathan Delaney was up front early in the race, ended up at the tail end of the lead lap at the stage break, manages to maintain the lead lap and back in the top 10 via pit strategy, but it seems like that car wants to get his way back up to the front now and at least lead around until the time comes to get pitted.
And you mentioned real casually there, Jonathan Delaney being behind the 21 man in the top 10, he's right there at 10th. I gotta ask, where did he come from, man? He restarted the last car on the lead lap, and he somehow found his way up into the top 10, which is definitely, still firmly within the catbird seat. I mean, being in the top 10, if something happens in front of you and you manage to avoid it, you can pick up some track position, and suddenly you find yourself racing for the lead. So, again, I mentioned if you want to make a mistake, make it early on, and this is exactly why. Jonathan Delaney using that stage caution, using a little bit of teamwork from his future team owner, everything kind of fell in his favor, and he's still in the game.
Yeah, he was one that he had picked up. That first lap, as everybody comes up to speed, is the best time to pick up as many positions as you can. If you can get that perfect restart, get the draft, and use it, you can make your way forward really, really quickly. He did a great job of navigating through a few cars to make his way up there into the 10th position. For the moment, he's hanging out, but I'm guarantee it, he learned a little bit coming through the field, because that's the first time he's had to work through the draft tonight, and getting a chance to work through everybody around him. You can practice this all day and all night, but actually having to work through it in race conditions, it's always a little different. The temperature is always a little different, and you never know what's going to happen. So getting that opportunity definitely is going to pay off for him in the long run.
And you make a great point. You can practice this all you want, but when you're racing in a competition, every driver is their own person. They've got their own personalities, their own driving styles. And to race around them effectively, you have to know that driver's style. You have to know how they drive, what kind of moves they make, what to expect out of them. And in addition to that, you mentioned, the car drives a lot different in the pack than it does being out front. Out front, you actually do have a little bit of downforce. The car does feel sort of planted. You get back in this pack, and suddenly your car almost feels weightless. It's like you're driving on the moon, and if you make a slight steering wheel movement, you find yourself pointed in the wrong direction. So for Jonathan Delaney to kind of really quickly adapt to the situation he found himself in is really impressive.
It definitely is. He did an amazing job working his way forward, looking through to see some of the guys that had problems earlier in the race. Jason Chambers now back in 23rd. He is currently one lap down. He is hoping to be in the right position at the stage break. And let's see. Most of those guys that had problems in that first half, they have now got to find a way back to the lead lap. And it's going to get really, really difficult. Their only hope is, as we come to the green flag stops, trying to extend and hoping for that pit road or that pit stop caution that often comes here at Daytona. It happens all the time, as we talked about in pre-race, where you have guys coming to pit road and you just bump into them or somebody's not paying attention. That is some of these guys' hope. And there's some fast cars that are back there just at the tail end or just barely a lap down that are hoping for a miracle now.
Absolutely, and I think a lot of this is by design. I mean, when you look at Bryson Hickson-Baugh and Adam Benefield, you have respectively the current regular season points leader, and you've got a former Coke Series driver who currently crew chiefs for Team Conti in the Coke Series. So these guys are talented. They've got it figured out, and it seems like them hanging back is definitely by choice. Like we mentioned earlier in the race, some drivers, they feel more comfortable in the back. And Bryson, I've been racing with him for a long time, even before iRacing, back on the old, console NASCAR video games. And this has always been his play. It's always been ride around in the back, and then when everything starts to go down up front, that's when you start making your move. And Adam Benefield, he's very similar. You know, he's a thinking driver. He's a very strategic driver. Never stops contemplating how to get the most out of his car, how to get the most out of his strategy. And, you know, when he's got his teammate, Brandon Pierce, right in front of him, Brandon Pierce is 1 lap down, which kind of puts him in a situation sort of like Cameron Stone and Jonathan Delaney, where, hey, we're teammates. You have nothing to gain and nothing to lose, so go ahead and help me out. And that's exactly what Brandon Pierce is doing.
Yeah, and even having your teammates a lap down or 2 or more, as long as you have a teammate out there on track, you have an ally somewhere. And it's just a matter of finding them, getting reconnected with them. That goes back to that team chat. You've got to be communicating all the time. There will be instances where a teammate might be up front, jumps out to the high side, and intentionally, once you jump to the high side alone, it's like somebody pulled a parachute on the car, and you drift to the back, but you get your teammate, and then you've got some speed to come up to the front. You can do a little work, a little side draft, and pick up some guys along the way that will come help you, and you can make your way back to the front and bring your teammate with you. We'll see a little bit of that in the final stage, I would imagine, as early on the teammates will be trying to work their way around and get back together. Right now, though, I'm really surprised by how little aggression that we're seeing on track. Is everybody's just playing it extremely safe. Smart driving, but I'm surprised we don't see more people up here trying to lead a lap and get some points.
Yeah, I mean, especially so close to the regular season championship, you'd think they want to get up there, lead the laps, you know, kind of get themselves some bonus points to see what they can do, throw their hat in the ring. But, you know, one interesting thing I noticed, I was kind of scrolling through the field here, and I stumbled upon Jason S. Taylor in that number 37 machine. He currently has quite a bit of rear end damage, and it's right in the middle. I'm not sure how he acquired that. I would assume it was something on the restart, or possibly a bump draft that was just a little bit too much. But, you know, you mentioned wanting to get a little bit of damage on the sides of the spoiler to crinkle it down, but how does having that damage raising the center of the spoiler up affect your car?
Well, the one problem you have is, A, you're really, really good in the draft, and you're really, really planted, and the guys behind you are thanking you for having that bigger spoiler because you're punching a bigger hole in the air. However, the problem is it is also going to slow you down. You'll be able to maintain the speed of the pack, and you'll be able to hang with them. But if you get out front, again, it's almost like getting the parachute, a smaller parachute pulled, but a parachute nonetheless. And you can't, you just can't carry leading a group around with that kind of a higher spoiler there. Hopefully he can get a little bit of that worked on when they come to pit road, but as it stands, it would be very, very difficult for him to get out front, lead, and possibly win here tonight. Time will tell, and it does look like, I'm guessing, he could have gotten that going to pit road as well, but I'm guessing a really hard hit on the restart. That is where 90% of your damage comes from here at Daytona, is somebody just doesn't shift quick enough. The guy behind them shifts too fast. Whatever the case may be, you can take some pretty hard hits bump drafting and not get that kind of damage. But yeah, he probably got that on the restart, and he's going to be suffering for it until he can get it fixed.
And you mentioned timing the shifts, and I think that's a great point, because next year we'll be moving on to the next gen car for 2022, and they got another gear they got to get through, so the timing is going to be even more difficult. So that'll be something to watch once we get into the future seasons here. But yeah, I mean, Jason S. Taylor, he actually made a pass on Devin Medeiros in that 217. He got up into 11th, so he does got that parachute, and it's holding him back. But right now, luckily, I think because everybody's so single file and the air that's being moved is just so immense, he's able to kind of circumnavigate the issues that he would have. So if he finds himself out front, like you said, that's when it gets bad, and that's rough because, you know, you mentioned you really only want to be out front for you know, a lap, maybe a lap and a half at the end of this thing, because otherwise drivers are going to get a run. If you're Jason S. Taylor and you find yourself in second, you really can't afford to make your move one lap with one to go, because they're going to pass you with that spoiler being raised up. You're going to have to wait till the very last minute and hope that you get the run, because if you don't, they're going to fly by you if they don't have the damage that you do. So that's going to be pretty rough. But, you know, you mentioned also being surprised by the patience, and I kind of am too. You know, I've commentated other leagues.
Oh,
and
there we go.
Pit road's a little eventful. Somebody locking up their brakes, and there goes the number. Ooh, what is that? That's the number 60. No, yep.
67 sideways, and several cars caught up in that. I'm guessing we're going to see several cars come back out on track with damage from that lead pack. The other interesting, 37 got some more damage, and I'm just willing to bet that a couple of the guys that stayed out there might have caught a little bit too, as these guys came off of the track so quickly that some of these guys up at the front might have been caught and caught a little bit of damage. It's going to be some rough going here now that green flag stop is, and here comes the lead pack is now coming to pit road with Cameron Stone in the lead, and the 28 or the 20, excuse me, locks up. He has to check way up, almost gets hit from behind, and he might get a penalty for going in the grass.
Yeah, I think he's going to compound penalties there. That was speeding, and he was in the grass there, so he's going to tack on an unsafe entry. That's, we mentioned how tough it is. This pit road is so inviting. You look at how much room you have, how open that entrance is, all that pavement, and you think, yeah, I can send it in just a little deeper, but oftentimes your confidence in your car is a little bit more than what you really should have, and unfortunately that's what happened. Now that 67 car, man, I'm honestly not sure how Jason Taylor made contact. I feel like he had quite a bit of time to respond to that, but perhaps he was just afraid of making any sudden movements and catching anybody behind him off guard. As we take a look at a replay, so we do have the replay, and we're riding on board the Dr. Pepper machine in our Soda Wars 400. You can see that 67 just getting sideways. He couldn't see him. That's why he didn't react to it. The smoke was just everywhere. I mean, that was completely blinding.
Yeah, and that is one of the great things about iRacing is they're constantly updating everything to be more accurate. And about a season and a half ago, they updated the smoke, and there was complaints that, hey, it's really hard to see when these kind of things happen. But when you go look at a real NASCAR race, guess what? It's really hard to see when they do that. So that is what happened there. And you have to wonder, now that Adam Benefield stayed out as long as he did with this pack, do you think he's going to go as soon as he sees everybody behind him start moving? Because last time he kind of got hung out to dry.
That's definitely a possibility. I mean, the driver is going to remember something like that, and they're definitely going to make adjustments in their strategy to kind of accommodate for that going forward, for sure. As we have a few more drivers making their way down pit road. That's the number 44 machine. And we still have a few cars staying out. Of course, Adam Benefield currently leading the way, Bryson Hicksonbaugh. And I'll tell you what, if there were to be a caution right now, which again, I do not think that it would be very likely. We're at the point where everybody's so separated that it's just not that commonplace to see a caution like that. But if it happened, that could be a big benefit to Benefield, Hicksonbaugh. I mean, there are some drivers who've gone down pit road who actually managed to go a lap down because they had those incidents on pit road. Generally, if you have a really good stop, you can avoid going a lap down under a green flag stop at a track like Daytona. But if you find yourself spinning out and making contact with other cars, that's more than enough time for the drivers on the track to get around, put you a lap down, and then if a caution comes out, then they get to start ahead of you just by the principle of you're a lap down and they're not. So they can come down pit road, get gas, get whatever they need, and start in front of you. So a caution could be pretty beneficial to these front runners at this point.
Yeah, and as they come up on some cars that they will be trying to lap here, these guys are just now coming off pit road, and these are some of the guys that were already a lap down. They really want these guys to hit pit road right now. This might be that opportunity that they're looking for to get back to the lead lap, and we'll have to see, does Benefield come? No, he does not come to pit road this time, so they're definitely trying to extend that fuel as long as they can. And remember, these guys, even though the stage is the same length, they did part of it under caution. After the caution flew, they came to pit road, and then they had a couple laps under caution, so they can go a little bit longer. Some of the drivers are splitting this evenly, just going by the numbers, and some of these guys are playing a different strategy where they are just going to extend as far as they can. It definitely benefits them, as you said. If that caution comes out, these guys are really way up in the catbird seat, but time will tell, as everybody seems to be back up off pit road now, except for the cars that haven't come yet.
And I do find it highly amusing that Bryson and Adam are working together up front like this, and they've been working together pretty much the entire race, because we talked about feuds earlier. I've been racing with Bryson Hicksonbaugh probably since about 2017. First on the console NASCAR games and then up into iRacing. So I've known him a good few years. And I have only ever heard him get mad at another driver one time. And that driver was Adam Benefield at the beginning of this season. Adam Benefield had gotten into his rear bumper a couple times consecutively through a few races. and kind of cost Bryson some track position and at one point even a win, it would seem. And Bryson came across the radio. He had a few choice words for Adam Benefiel, and I had never in my life heard Bryson get quite that irate about anything on track. He's usually so cool and collected. We call him the robot because he doesn't have emotion. So to see him working so well with the one driver that's ever been able to get under his skin, it seems like that race car driver does have a short memory.
It definitely does. I gotta tell you, I can count on one hand the number of times. I'm usually the guy that's cutting up, joking around, and having a good time. I can count on one hand the number of times I have lost my cool in races. And it's definitely, those are the guys you got to watch out for, because I guarantee you, I can still remember a couple of people's names that did cause me to lose my temper once or twice. And, that can, it sticks around in your memory. So it's interesting to see that, but it's good to see that they're letting bygones be bygones and playing nice. And it looks like they're giving each other a little bit of extra room here, because they could be really a lot closer together right now.
Absolutely. I mean, Bryson, if he wanted to force the issue, get up on the bump of the 83 and say, hey, I'm here. If you don't want to be pushed, then you need to move out of the way. But he's not doing that. He's giving them space. He's kind of leaving, a comfortable drafting distance between everybody. And yeah, they're really playing nice right now. And really, again, I mean, you pointed it out earlier there, Doug, the whole field has been the most chaos we've had is coming down onto pit road. But that's, nothing malicious. That's nothing intentional. That's just drivers coming in a little too hot, having a little bit too much faith in those worn out Goodyears. But on track, everything has been super. Ooh, as we go 3 wide with lap traffic there for just a moment, everything's been super clean, super clean, and everybody's just really riding it out. So I'm curious to see. I mean, you said the last 10% of the race is when you turn it up. I'm curious to see what these drivers decide to do.
You know what's funny about the pit road thing too is it's not just in a stock car. In the 24 hours of Daytona, I saw it constantly. You're right about the pit road being so inviting. You just try and push that thing all the way to the limit, to the line, get as slow as you can. Even if you have a pit road speed limiter in the car, like you do in a GTE or a GT3 car, you come down to pit road, you hit that speed limiter as late as possible. These guys are pushing it as late as possible, and it's always the same effect. You have burned off all your gas, you've used your tires too much, and although at Daytona you don't use your tires nearly as much, but you still have worn them down. They don't have the same grip. They're extremely hot, and if you get into any of the marbles, your car gets really, really squirrely and really hard to stop. So the pit road stuff is kind of to be expected. And these guys that had problems, they're just hoping by the time the stage break comes around, they have corrected the issues. They're in that lead group. As of right now, I'm only showing 14 cars on the lead lap, so there's a lot of guys that definitely need a little bit of luck here.
Absolutely, they're going to need a little bit of luck, and I'm really surprised by how far Benefiel and Hixenbaugh are stretching this. I mean, we mentioned that this stage is technically a few laps less on fuel simply because we were under caution for a few of the laps. And you mentioned that if you're at the tail end of the pack or if you have a really good draft partner in the first stage, you could theoretically almost make it. If you're a betting man, what do you think the odds are that Benefiel and Bryson are actually trying to stretch this to the end?
If I were a betting man on this one, I would almost bet that they're trying to stretch to the point that they can pit right before the stage break and put themselves in perfect. They're not going to win the stage doing that, but what they will end up doing is being out front when the final stage starts. That's just a gut feeling that they're going to try and stretch it. They've been 30 laps now on that tank of fuel. If they can go that far, they know they can keep stretching it, and Benefield might be a little bit close. If we see him drop back and let somebody else take the point here, I guarantee you that that's what they're going to try and do. And stopping right before that stage break, that is always a genius idea. As I continue around Benefield, he looks like he's going to go to pit road, but he never does. So bit interesting out there. Meanwhile, the rest of the field staying single file, other than guys moving up and down, trying to just keep the car cool. And we're seeing less and less of guys moving around to keep the car cool at this point. They're just trying to keep it straight, keep some momentum, and we are seeing more gaps between everybody as the leaders start to see a pack of cars at the tail end of the lead lap right ahead of them. And it's worth noting Jonathan Delaney is now back up into 5th after that pit stop. So he is starting to work his way forward as well.
All right, I apologize for that. I had some internet issues there. I was talking, and then it seemed like nothing could be heard. So then I looked, I was on one bar. That is on me. I apologize for that. But we're back. But yeah, going back to what you were saying there before my internet issues, with the track position that you gain coming in right before the end of the pit stop, I think that's what Adam Benefield and Bryson have been running in the back so long tonight. And they've kind of been playing it safe. And I think as we approach the 3rd stage, maybe in their minds, that's just, it's go time. Like, okay, we're going to get up front, we're going to lead the way. And hopefully, if they can stay up front, and they'd be in front of the incident that they were trying to avoid by hanging back. So that'll be curious to see how that plays out for them.
It actually looks like they just now came to pit road because it's scoring Cameron Stone back in the lead. So they have come to pit road and looks like they're rolling back out on track. So strategy there kind of out the window unless they decide to make that late race or late stage, I should say, pit stop to play that strategy out.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, pitting at lap 86, I feel like that's a little too soon. I mean, they're basically tacking on an extra 15 laps or so to their fuel run if they were to not pit. So assuming they've all pit on lap 30, they could probably go somewhere around 45 laps on fuel. I don't think that's enough. I think you're right. I think that kind of puts that strategy out the window. But the track position does seem all right. I mean, last time across the loop, they were scored in the top 10. We'll have to see where they are when they get scored again. But yeah, I think they were definitely trying that strategy, and they just couldn't quite save enough. And it makes sense because the pack they were in just wasn't quite that big, so maybe they weren't conserving the amount that they thought.
Yeah, they're this lead pack now. Cameron Stone, Jonathan Delaney, Kevin Steele. These guys are picking up a lot of these lap cars in these smaller packs, and as that pack gets bigger, they'll be able to do a little bit more with it and pick up some speed. Whereas looking back, Adam Benefield and Bryson are together and alone for the moment, so they're actually losing some ground. Adam's definitely not having any luck tonight with the pit stops, but we'll have to wait and see how things play out for him. He's been caught a couple of different times with bad pit strategy and just not having any luck here tonight. So have to wait and see how it plays out. The fortunate thing is they can make that mistake right now. It's a little bit late to make a mistake, but they will still should theoretically be able to stay on the lead lap until the stage break.
Yeah, they should be able to stay on the lead lap. I mean, they don't got that much further to go. They're getting close to about half a lap down right now, so I'd say you're absolutely correct there. But, that's the kind of risk that you take. Whenever you take that strategy of I'm going to hang back so that I'm behind the incident if it happens rather than in front, you run the risk of falling back and kind of losing the opportunity to get back out front once it's time to do so. So you got to be vigilant, and I feel like it's almost like playing blackjack. There comes a point where you got to say, do I want to stay back? Do I want to hold, or do I want to go? And if you hold too much, well, you're going to lose. The dealer's going to win. So, when you stay in the back of the pack, you see everybody pulling away. You see that strategy maybe isn't necessarily working out for you, but you stick to it. That's the risk you run.
It definitely is, and it might end up paying off as the leaders come around some lap traffic here. And looks like for the most part, the lap traffic has been successfully getting out of the way, but there's been a few close calls. That pack, even though it's only 4 or 5 cars, they're still a lot faster than 2 cars are. And when they come up on them with that huge run, if everybody's not careful, somebody's getting run over. But now the leader has some drafting help. He doesn't necessarily have to pass. Looks like he's going to, though.
He's going to try it. Again, you said he doesn't really have to, but he seems to be making an attempt. He does have help behind him. He's got Jonathan Delaney, and it looks like the 24 went with him there. went ahead and kind of moved up to the high line. Now, this could be a chance for Kyle in that number 20 car to try and get the draft of those lap cars, maybe get up a little bit closer. We'll have to see. And of course, we got the number 70 machine a little bit further back from there. But I mean, really, these top 3 drivers are really, for position, the only drivers in this pack. And everybody else in this pack, like you mentioned, are all lap cars. Because you go back to 4th, it's Alex Princeton in that number 19. He's 6 seconds back. So I'm not sure why they would pass these lap cars when really they're kind of relying on them for the draft. It's an interesting strategy call. But I guess that's why they're in the car and I'm in the booth. They know best.
And it's you made the gambling reference there. It's always a crapshoot at Daytona as to what the right strategy is. You can do everything perfectly all day, and at the end of the day, just come out on the losing end of it. Everything can go perfect. You can have perfect pit stops, perfect strategy, perfect fuel mileage, car's perfect, and still just come out behind. It's just luck of the draw at times. You have to use that strategy and everything to put you in the right position, but sometimes somebody's strategy breaks yours or is just slightly better, whatever the case may be. It often comes down to just who made the right strategy call at the right moment, and you've got to be able to change that on the fly as well. This second group is actually, it's interesting that lead pack, now that it has a couple lap cars in it, is stabilized. That second pack was actually gaining on them until they picked up these lap cars. Now this bigger pack with the 2 leaders in it, it's actually pulling away again.
Yeah, it's kind of a revolving door. I've made that reference before. You always see cars gaining momentum, losing momentum, gaining momentum, losing momentum. And it really, like you said, it depends on the luck of the draw, what cars are around you, how much are they willing to work with you. And at times, it's also, I mean, how aggressive are they? I mean, I've been in this situation where I'm in that second pack. And in my mind, I'm thinking if we just started bump drafting and we started getting aggressive, it wouldn't necessarily be the safest way to navigate this track, but we might be able to catch up with this lead pack. But the drivers around you, they just want to be here at the end, which is probably the smarter play, to be honest. But, they want to keep their car clean, and they don't want to do the bump drafting. They don't want to tandem. They just kind of want to ride. And so all you can do is watch those leaders drive off into the sunset and hope that maybe at some point you pick up another lap or two to give you that extra speed.
Yeah, and in that second pack, we just had a car, Matt White, went way high off of turn 3, and we'll have to wait and see. He pulls back in, but looked like he might be having some sort of problem as he got off into turn 3, just shot up to the wall, almost got into it. And these guys are back here staying single file. They are tucked up a little bit closer, but it's not making a huge actually, they are starting to lose ground, even though up front, Cameron Stone and John Delaney, they lost a couple of their draft partners back there, and they're just managing to stay single file. So a little bit of an interesting situation starting to develop with these 2 lead packs.
Absolutely, and here we go to the number 21 down on the low side. And I got to ask you, as a driver, Doug, what is your preferred line? If you're too wide, if you have to go too wide at a track like Daytona, do you want to be on the bottom or do you want to be up top? Where do you personally feel more comfortable? Because for me, I've always thought, the bottom was a little bit safer because when a car spins, it's going to spin up the track. And if you're on the bottom, you can just kind of go down low, try to avoid them. But I have heard drivers that they feel safer up top, and that's just kind of how they roll.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely feel safer on the bottom, but I know a lot of guys that feel safer up top just because they can see the spin from the bottom, or they can see the incident and at least get to the brakes and make some sort of move. But oftentimes it really doesn't matter where you're at. But 90% of the time, if you're on the bottom, you at least have the apron to jump down to, maybe even the grass. You might turn a little bit, but you're at least a little bit more in control of your own destiny if you can react quick enough. I think that being up top, I never feel really comfortable. I'll hop up there to make a pass. It's almost like going down the highway. You go to the outside lane, you make the pass, then you hop back in line. It's just the safest play to make, in my opinion. But I know a lot of people that are probably better than me that say, hey, I'm safer on the outside.
I agree with you there. I've always preferred running that low line down by the double yellow line and giving myself some room to kind of work with. I mean, especially at Daytona, the backstretch, there's a lot of pavement down there. If anything happens and you need to divert your course and go down there, you have plenty of, if need be, you even got the road course chicane. Not ideal to be down there, but it's better than making contact with another driver's door at 180 miles an hour. So yeah, I'd have to agree. I think that's probably most drivers' standpoint. But yeah, this stage is coming to a close. We're on lap 98. So right now we got about 2.5 to go. 2.5 that Cameron Stone has to lead. Now the question here is, Delaney really wants these stage points. I mean, being so close to the regular season championship, does Cameron Stone let him by? Or even if Cameron doesn't, how aggressive does Delaney get to try to make this pass and win the stage?
Well, Cameron Stone sitting third in points, so he wants to get some points here as well. Based on what we saw on that last stage, we didn't see any aggression or anybody trying to make a move. Saw briefly a car jump out and then jumps right back in. I don't know. It's a tough call. I think Delaney's going to try for it, but I don't think Stone's going to give it to him very easily here. We'll have to wait a lap or so to find out for sure. And the question then becomes, the cars behind them, who do they go with and who gets the help?
Absolutely, who gets the help indeed. I mean, like I said, we've really got 3 drivers that are 4th position in this lead pack, and right now they kind of all have some sort of tie or relation to one another. I mean, of course, Jonathan Delaney will be driving for Cameron Stone next year, and Cameron Stone is currently driving for Kevin Steele. So it's kind of like a sitcom. You got these drivers that really shouldn't be getting along right now, but right now they're just running 1, 2, 3, and they're trying to make things happen. I'm just curious, does Kevin Steele go for this lead? And if so, I mean, how tough is that move going to be? There he goes down low. Looked like he was thinking about it. The door opened up for a minute. He kind of looked low, then he backed out of it, thought better of it. Around 3 and 4 for the final time in this stage, at least. Looks like Cameron Stone is going to continue to lead the way on board with Jonathan Delaney. Does he make the move? You can see him closing in a little bit. He looks high. But there's that parachute you mentioned, Doug. It just deployed the second he pulled out. Cameron Stone is going to win stage 2.
Yeah, he definitely should have waited a split second longer and pulled up a little bit closer as they've got a lap car up in the wall. That was a close one. He probably could have started that run a little bit sooner when he was a little bit closer. Might have had the opportunity, but he had no help behind. Nobody was close enough to really give him either one of them a push. And caution is out for the stage break now, so everybody gets to tuck up underneath the pace car and go get 4 fresh tires and fuel. So now here's the question for you, Andre. This might be the best time to get 4 tires, to get that set of left sides on now. Do you do it now, or do you stick with right sides and go for track position?
Well, I think it depends on where I'm at. I think if I'm anybody who's outside the top 10, why not get 4 fresh Goodyears, see if that little bit of extra grip helps me out, making some moves through the pack. But I think if I'm Cameron Stone, Jonathan Delaney, Kevin Steele, I'm just not entirely sure it's worth it. I think a lot of it comes down to, you're only going to use those 4 fresh Goodyears if things get crazy and they get aggressive. And thing is, so far, we've not seen a lot of aggression in this race. It's been a very tame Soda Wars 400 here at Daytona International. Really, the only cautions have been for stages. We've had no cautions for cause, only a few single-car incidents, most of which were not very bad at all. So that's kind of something that these guys got to think, when thinking about their tire strategy. How aggressive has everybody been? How many yellows have we got? And the answer is we really haven't had many.
No, it's really just the fact we saw one car completely spin out, but got down low and managed to not pull a caution. So, hey, that was awesome. And the fact that we didn't pull the caution, but it's so strange. Even in the real world, we see more cautions at Daytona, at Talladega. So definitely a strange situation as everybody starts to look to pit road. We'll have one car get a lucky dog wave around here, and looking to see how many cars that's going to put back on the lead lap. But I think things with the small number of cars on the lead lap, I think things will probably heat up in this final stage a little bit earlier.
Yeah, stage 3, I mean, there's no more guaranteed cautions to fall back on. So for drivers like Bryson and Adam, who've been holding back, they've kind of been relying on these stages to say, well, it doesn't really matter how far we fall back as long as we're on the lead lap because we're going to get the stage caution once you back up and you'll have another shot at it. Now, that's not a guarantee. You know, they might get another chance at it, but it really could go either way. It also comes down to the fact that, you know, some of these guys are going to start getting more aggressive now when they haven't been aggressive. And if they don't know how their car feels when they really start to put the pedal to the floor and when they really start weaving in and out of the draft, that could make things a little chaotic.
Yeah, it definitely could. And the one guy in that lead pack that definitely does know how it's going to feel in the pack trying to work through the draft is Jonathan Delaney. And I'm looking forward to seeing, you know, he's going to restart, looks like in second place. So he's not going to have to do a lot of fighting early, but once things start getting busy, once people start shuffling around, then we're going to see who comes to the front. And Jonathan Delaney is one of the lead lap cars that has probably moved through more of the pack than anybody else. So he definitely has a bit of an advantage here as we go into it. But Alex Princeton, excuse me, he's picked up a lot of positions. He's came through a lot tonight, as has Bryson Hicksonbaugh. There's a few guys in that lead group that are going to have a little bit of an advantage having worked through the traffic. But at the end of the day, it just comes down to, hey, luck and skill and fingers crossed.
And that's exactly what it comes down to. And you're right. I mean, drivers like Bryson and Adam, they've got a little bit more experience being in the pack and having to make moves, so that could be a benefit for sure. Also, I want to make a minor correction. I was under the impression that Patrick Newton was not going to grid for this race. He told me that he would not be gridding. At least he mentioned it in chat, I believe, in one of the chats. So I mentioned that. I didn't think he gridded. Well, he did, and he is currently running right there in the top 10, P9. He is the number 46 machine. I've been trolled, as our producer says. He sounded like he wasn't going to race, and then he raced, and I haven't really been paying too much attention. So he's here. He's around. You know, Patrick, that's the kind of driver he is. He's around. So he's having a pretty good night, though, up inside the top 10. And like I said before, Doug, anytime you find yourself in the top 10 at a plate track, you still got a shot. It's just one of those styles of racing where you're never really out of the game unless you find yourself laps down or with an absurd amount of damage.
Yeah, definitely true. An interesting tidbit of the 4 cars that in the front 2 rows, Sean O'Brien Jr. is the only one that did not take 4 tires. I'm not sure if he took 2 or just fuel only, but he's starting in 3rd. Cameron Stone and John Delaney both took 4. Kevin Steele took 4. I think Bryce Hoffman took 4 as well. So a bit of an interesting strategy play here. We'll have to wait and see how that plays out, but you got guys that are going to have a ton of grip as we start out here tonight. And this final stage, we know it's going to be aggressive. That grip might be the difference between a win or a crumpled up race car.
Definitely could be. As the pace truck pulls off, we're going to see exactly how much grip that 65 machine has. And Sean O'Brien, as he starts on the outside, and there's a little bit of wheel spin there. You can see how Cameron Stone pulling away as the outside stalls out due to the wheel spin. And then Sean O'Brien's going to dive down to the bottom, find his lock in the line. That's going to leave the top lane with 2 less drivers in the bottom. That's going to make it tough. Kevin Steele managed to find his way to the bottom. I thought he was on top. I'm going to pull a car, I suppose. But he's still right there in 3rd. And this lead pack is really starting to break away now. I think, and I'm not very good with predictions. I'm kind of notoriously wrong about everything I say. But now that Sean O'Brien has found himself on the bottom, and the wheel spin didn't cause an incident, it didn't cause him to fall too far back in the pack, I think he might be able to hold on to this track position. And, the old tires, he's not going to be able to make the aggressive overtakes that some of these guys will be able to make, and it might be a little difficult to defend. But overall, his lap times aren't really going to suffer. And as long as he keeps in mind how little grip he has and he drives accordingly, he might have a good shot at a good finish here.
Definitely would. At Daytona, at Talladega, more so, tires are more important at Talladega. At Daytona, the biggest part of old tires is that wheel spin at the start or on the restart. So he's cleared that, as there's a couple of cars getting a little dicey mid-pack. Everybody staying single file at the moment, but he should have fairly close to the same grip. If he doesn't change right side tires, he might lose a little bit of speed after that last green flag stop. But the other thing that comes into play here now, is we know a couple of drivers we've seen go 30-plus laps on a tank of fuel. Now the question becomes the people you're working with, at what point do you stop? You could stop at lap 130 and be good to go. You know that for sure. Or you could go to lap 150 and stop then. Stopping in the last 10 laps to go, probably not the wisest point, but now we're going to see a lot of different tire strategy and fuel strategy especially, and who goes when.
Yeah, I would say stage 3 is not the time to extend your fuel on like Hicksenbaugh and Benefield did earlier, because it is really kind of the time. I'm speaking backwards here. It is the time to extend it, because if you pit early and you get trapped a lap down, let's say you have an issue getting into pit road and you find yourself a lap down, or maybe you come out ahead of the leaders but you don't have a pack of cars, so they go around you anyway. If you get a caution and you're trapped a lap down, that could be game over, right? So you kind of have to hope that when you pit early in stage 3 that there is no caution, that everything stays green and everything sees its course. Whereas I feel like if you stay out longer and you kind of you minimize that risk. You don't have that risk because you're staying out. You're not putting yourself a lap down. If you get a caution, you're able to pit. Great. If you don't get a caution, you can still pit, and the likelihood of you being trapped a lap down is still never zero, but it's way less likely.
Yeah, I think the later you pit, the better off you are, except the groups of cars at the back of the pack. That is the people that might be trying short pit, and by the virtue of short pitting, they'll have to take less fuel on to get a full tank, and they can get in and out of pit road quicker. And if you're at the back of the pack and you need some kind of advantage, that is what you should think about doing. As we get one car jumps to the high side, didn't look like he was trying to cool off there. I think there's a couple of guys a little bit further back, about 6th, 7th, 8th place, that are starting to look a little bit racy. They're starting to think about how they can get, and you just sometimes you just jump out to see who's going to follow you if you make that move.
Right, you kind of got to get a feel for it. You jump out, you see who's really willing to make a move, and the thing is, though, you can't do that too many times, because some of the guys behind you, they might see you jumping out repeatedly, and they're thinking, well, this guy's never going to stick with me. He jumps out, he goes back down, and then they might lose confidence that if they go with you, you're going to stay up there. They're going to worry that you're going to hang them out to dry. So it's a game of chess, really, just figuring out who you can work with, who you can trust, and who's good for a shove when it comes down to it. A lot of these guys up front, like I said, they've been working together for a long time. Kevin Steele, Jonathan Delaney, the 57. I think if another pack of cars got to run on them, if another driver outside this group here got to run, these drivers would work together pretty much effortlessly to kind of try and put the stop to their run. But some of these other guys, like Sean O'Brien Jr., he's not really been racing with these guys. He just kind of jumped up in track position to do his tire strategy. And so he hasn't really built up that reputation or that trust with these guys. So that just makes it even more difficult for the number 65 to try to make a move.
Yeah, and looking through the field, it's the 63 of Bryce Hicksenbaugh that is the one that he is backing off the car in front of him, and he'll suck back up. He jumps to the high side a couple of times to see who go with him. I think he is starting to get a little bit racy. He wants to get back up to the front, and he is really starting to play with it. That time he just moves up to try and cool the engine, it looked like. But he was right on the back bumper of Adam Benefield last time, and he just keeps playing with the draft a little bit. I think he's starting to think, hey, I need to get up into position now. Once that green flag stop comes, I want to be in X position when I make the move. And now they're going to start looking to the high side. It looks like as the 83, they're going to have a little bit of help. We might see a move to the front. This is when some of these guys decided to go.
Yeah, some of these guys want to get up there. They want to lead these laps, and if they can form a nice backup on that high line, and it looks like more cars coming up to join them there. There's another one. I mean, yeah, they're gaining cars up on that high line pretty rapidly, and I think that's because these guys know, like, if they're going to make the move, these leaders aren't going to open up the bottom. They're not going to leave that door open. So if they're going to make something happen, it's got to be up top. And I kind of mentioned it. When you're one of those drivers that's been hanging around in the back the whole time, there's comes a point where you have to kind of abandon that strategy. You have to say, okay, it's time to go. And I guess for Adam and Bryson, now is the time to go, as they are side by side with Bryce Hoffman in the number 21. And they are going to, looks like that top lane is actually carrying a little bit more momentum. I mean, in the corners, they're going to lose ground, but of course, the high line is the further way around the track, so it kind of allows them to build more speed to carry down the straightaways. So it all sort of evens out. But they are beginning to lose the main pack, and not just the outside lane, the inside as well is beginning to lose the main pack. And I got to wonder, maybe they're unintentionally side drafting each other by going side by side like this?
Yeah, it looks like they're not only that, but by pulling out, they're while they're side by side and side drafting, they're still side by side. They're not single file. They don't have that big pack that can stay with it. So that outside line's got to make something happen and work their way past that inside line to get back up. I would imagine that before long we'll see Bryson and the 83 of Adam Benefield, if they can get up front, those two cars probably drop back to the inside line, try and get that group back up to the lead pack. That lead pack isn't that big, though, and if these guys will just work and stay close together, they have the opportunity to catch back up. And that outside line is, they carry a lot of momentum down the straightaway, but the other problem is there's not been a lot of cars up there tonight. There's not been as much rubber laid down up there as you'd normally see, and therefore there's not going to be as much speed. They're going to have to stay up there, build that outside lineup. They get the run off of turn 2, and they get a huge jump, but until they get some more built up on the high side of the turns, they're just not going to be as fast. Once they've laid down a lot more rubber, then we'll start seeing that outside line be a little bit faster in the corners.
Yeah, it's just kind of at that point, I think some of these drivers got to put aside their pride, put aside their track position, and say, all right, we need to get single file, because I think right now the second pack actually has more cars than the lead pack. It's just the fact that they're side by side, so the individual rows are shorter, and of course, one of those rows is on the high side, which isn't always necessarily faster, like you mentioned. If they were to get single file, they might have a shot at catching that lead pack, but, to do that, we have a lot of cooperation. And it seems like they are starting to sort out single file. A few drivers diving down low. Bryson and Adam are going to join the number 21 down on the low line. There's a couple cars trapped up there. I believe that is 38, perhaps. Just on the corner of the screen there. I could be wrong. But a couple of those drivers stuck on the high line there. And they're going to find their lot in line. Now, the question is, are these guys going to be able to use the greater numbers that they have after the pit sequence? If these guys could all coordinate coming down to the pits, having a big group to exit with, that may be the strategy call to overcome the time that they lost.
One of the cars that got stuck on the outside was the 20 car, and he is currently a lap down just barely. And he's gonna, he's up there trying to get an advantage, and if he can get into the right lane and possibly get around the leader by staying in the pack, he can get one of his laps back. So that the 20 is 2 laps down, excuse me. So he has a chance to. He was trying to find a way to work one of those laps back in, maybe get himself into position to get back to the lead lap. If a caution comes out, get a wave around, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen. And now they're going to pick up some more lap cars, so they should be back to the lead group in a few laps now that they're all single file again.
I'd agree there. I think give them enough time as long as they stay single file. Frank, look at this lead pack. You've got 5 cars in this lead pack, and that is it. Back to 6th place Adam Benefield. We go to our 3-wide TV multicam. Bottom of the screen, that is your lead pack, only a mere 4 or 5 cars. And then you got the big pack there, and they are way exceeding in numbers compared to the lead pack, and they have the draft on their side as they kind of swapped around. So now the bottom of the screen is the second pack there. But yeah, I think pit strategy is definitely going to be a lot more important now than I would have assumed earlier, because I kind of assumed once we got into the third stage, things would heat up. The cars, the drivers would start getting a little bit more aggressive. We'd see some cautions that would kind of throw a lot of the strategies under the bus. But we haven't seen that. It's remained green, and it doesn't look like these guys are getting too aggressive. So really, that leaves the one big determining factor, the one big question mark, as being who can find success in this green flag pit sequence.
Yeah, and another interesting fact is while that lead pack is a lot smaller, they're staying straighter, they're staying a little bit closer together, and they are actually maintaining and occasionally extending their lead. So it's definitely going to come into play when they come to pit road. This second pack has got to do less than that lead pack does on pit road to regain that time. If they can't regain a little bit of time here, they're going to have to be really, really smart about how they do it. And we've got cars 1 and 2 at a time coming to pit road now that they know, hey, I'm right at the window. I can make it from here. They're going to go ahead and come to pit road, maybe alone, thinking that that strategy might pay off. Occasionally it does, but you got to get really, really lucky for a single car pit stop to work out. They're just hoping they can get a little bit of that luck. But with those single cars, we've seen the lead packs, both of them, have to navigate around lap cars, and that could come into play and could cause problems as this run goes on.
Yeah, lap cars can be a make or break factor of plate racing. Sometimes they help you out. They give you a little bit of extra draft. They go exactly where you want them to go, and then other times they kind of get in the way. They slow you down. They allow the cars behind you to get a run at it, and it can really go either way. So that'll be absolutely interesting to watch as well. But I really think a lot of these drivers, like I said earlier, I think a lot of these guys are going to try and extend their fuel run, extend their tire run, just to make sure that they're not trapped a lap down. Even though, like I said, the race has been pretty tame, so it's not like they're expecting a bunch of cautions. But I'd still say that would be the safer strategy. I'm curious to see how many of them go for it. And also, Sean O'Brien Jr., he's starting to fall back from this lead pack a little bit. You can see he's got about a 3-car length gap. And it looked like he got a little squirrely when the air got taken off the spoiler coming out of turn 4. And I got to wonder, are those old tires finally starting to come back to bite him?
You got to think that it's rare. I mean, the track is going to be, the air temperature's cooler, so you got a little more power. You get a little bit more speed out of it. But the track cooling off should give him a little bit of grip, but that additional grip also means additional wear on those tires. So that can definitely be coming into play. However, he's got a lap car right behind him, so he's got a little bit of help. He's staying within reach of the draft, just barely. He's just got to be really careful and really smart here to make sure he can close back up when he needs to. He's going to have to pit with them, and that's going to be a disadvantage for him on this final pit stop when they decide to go. He's going to have to take at least right side tires on this next stop. That could definitely come into play here if everybody else takes no tires and does a fuel only stop, which is extremely possible. I've run 60 and 70 laps here with no tires on, so he's going to have to take right sides. If nobody else does, he could be hung out to dry here.
Absolutely. I just don't see how he could take no tires again and really make it to the end safely. I feel like there comes a point where the grip fall off is so extreme that you can't even really get a handle on that thing. And, it's bad enough when you're driving on your own, but, he does have a car behind him. He's been in and amongst the pack, and sometimes that air gets taken off your spoiler, and it just gets real rough. But so he's going to have to take 2 right sides probably, like you said. And I got to wonder if maybe he doesn't look out and he cycles out behind the leaders, but maybe close enough to just barely catch their draft if he was absolutely lucky. But that would be a real close call. I mean, we do have a very large drafting range. We have, the big spoilers that punch a huge hole, so you can really catch the draft in about a second back. He would really have to look out with the timing on that pit stop and hope that his team really got those tires on there quick.
Yeah, it looks like he is starting to scrub some speed in the corners, so the tire's definitely coming into play. And interesting, though, on the straightaway, he manages to suck right back up. So, like you said, he's really struggling in turns 1 and 2 right now. He's lucky that he can continue to draft back up, but he needs that pack to pit early rather than late if he's going to stay with it. He's now making a point of coming off of turn 2 and on the straightaways being tucked right up to the back bumper to hang on to it.
Yeah, he is right on that back bumper, like you said. He's trying to do it best he can, and you got to change your driving style a little bit. When your tires start wearing like that, there's some accommodations you got to make sure that you keep the car underneath you and point it in the right direction. And that seems to be what he's doing, and he's doing a good job of it. It's just right now he's just kind of, his race is a house of cards, and those 2 tires are what's going to really knock it down. We'll have to see how he's at form. But I got to also wonder, you got Matt White behind him in the number 70. And how frustrated is he getting? Because he's got a car in front of him that doesn't have the corner speed that he has. It's holding him up a little bit. He's got that checkup. He's got to get off the throttle. The cars ahead of him don't have to do that because they're ahead of Sean O'Brien Jr. So maybe at some point we're going to see that 70 start to boil over and say, all right, I'm going to try to make a move. And if that happened, that would be interesting because there may be some drivers up ahead of him. Kevin Steele, for example, that wants to get up out of third and into the lead, who says, all right, the 70 moved out. let's see what we can do, and they might jump out with them. So a lot of dynamics at play right now.
And I just noticed that Sean O'Brien and Matt White are on the same radio channel. So, you noticed it right there as they came through the turn. Sean O'Brien was definitely struggling through that turn last time by, especially through 3 and 4. He couldn't hold a steady line. He was all over the place. So I guarantee it, Matt White is probably saying a little something to him about it right now. Meanwhile, a little further back in the pack, that group is still staying single file, but they're not getting any real headway right now. They're still almost 5 seconds back. They were about 4 1/4 seconds back just a couple of laps ago. So despite the bigger pack, for whatever reason, probably because they're just not drafting tight enough, they're just not staying single file enough, and too many guys are weaving around that they're not getting the momentum they need, and they're not getting enough draft. They're now over 5 seconds back from this lead pack, and when they come to pit road, as we mentioned, they're going to have to do less than this lead pack. Sean O'Brien can actually get away with changing tires, and that second pack might, if he pits at the same time as them, he might be able to come out with them and help pull them back up.
That's a good point. I mean, the second pack is a bit of like a backup plan for him. He would kind of fall right into their clutches given the extra time on his pit stop. So that could be really interesting. And there goes Jonathan Delaney, Kevin Steele, and Sean O'Brien. And oh boy, Sean O'Brien really sending it into the pits deep, nearly getting into the back end of the 24. I thought for a moment that he might slide into him. I mean, with as old as those tires are, it's going to be real hard to slow that thing down. But he got it down to pit road speed, kept it under 5,500. Now he's going to pull into his pit stall, and this is where we see how does it go.
He's definitely getting right side tires as some of the second pack has started to come to pit road. Be interesting to see what he chooses to do here completely, but he is definitely getting some fresh tires. So as long as he maintains that lead pack, he might still be in contention. And this is why where Adam Benefield and Bryson Hicksonball's strategy earlier, stretching their fuel mileage. Mike, no, I spoke too soon because they come to pit road this time as well, and that whole pack comes down, and some guys locking up brakes trying to get down to pit road speed.
Yeah, I'm surprised to see him come down so soon. Seems like that's the move to make. And one thing I noticed is that, Sean O'Brien was not the only driver in that lead pack that took 2 tires there, Doug. It looked like Jonathan Delaney took 2. I know the 24 took 2 tires. I'm not sure what Cameron Stone did. I think he may have also taken 2. But that surprises me. I almost expected them, like you did, to just go ahead and take no tires. I mean, they got 4 fresh Goodyears on the last stop. They could easily stretch those out to the end. I mean, we saw how far Sean O'Brien went. And really, I mean, as long as he drove carefully with the egg under the accelerator, he was doing all right for himself. But no, they took the 2 tires on the right-hand side, and you gotta wonder how much communication was there. I mean, because it seems like taking 2 tires would have been a huge gamble there, and they kind of just lucked out that everybody did it.
Yeah, they really did, and it looks like the entire lead pack did take, based on their pit stop times, they all took 2 tires. So it's a bit lucky that it worked out. It looks like Sean O'Brien is just barely hanging on to the draft right now, but if he can get pulled back up, he might be okay here, and his strategy might have paid off getting himself into that track position.
And what a strategy it was. I mean, you and I were both kind of shaking our heads and groaning, thinking, I don't know about that one, but it worked out, and it turned out to be a really smart play. It worked out fantastically for the driver of that 65, and I always like to see that. Back in when I raced on the NASCAR console games and leagues, one of my buddies always pulled the craziest strategies. And, 99 times out of 100 they wouldn't work, but that one time that it did, it was like winning the lottery. It was just fun to watch. So very interested to see what Sean O'Brien can do with this sort of second win that his strategy has given him, as some drivers remain on track. Alex Princeton in the number 19, Preston McRae in the 53. I believe those are the only 2 drivers to have yet to pit. Preston McRae, he's been running tail end of the lead lap. We haven't talked about him yet tonight, but for pretty much the entirety of Stage 3 and most of Stage 2, he was running at the tail end of the lead lap. Now, as he stayed out, he finds himself 16 seconds ahead of the leader, but he will lose much more than that 16 seconds once he comes down pit road. Same goes for Alex Princeton. And as there are only 2 cars left to come down pit road, we got some viewers in the chat that wanted another Bring the Noise. So Let's take in the sights and sounds of the World Center of Racing and bring the noise. All right, welcome back from the Bring the Noise. That was the sights and sounds of Daytona International. A little bit darker now, as the sun is completely down, as it has been for a while. And of course, you got a good example of the kind of lack of visibility these drivers have, sitting so low in these cars, running in a single file line. And of course, that's something that I always tend to harp on and talk about. So I apologize for being a broken record, but it's one of the things that astounds me most about these plate races is, you get up behind somebody, you're going 200 miles an hour, and you can't see anything but their bumper. And so everything you do, every move you make is based essentially on the car in front of you and what they're doing. If you got a triple monitor setup, sometimes you can look down at the, out your driver's side window and have a little bit of a reference point, but just so little visibility. And the roll bar cameras that we went to really show that off and makes it difficult. And then, you have a night race where it gets a little bit darker and harder to see, just kind of compounds it.
Yeah, it really, really does. It's even easier to see in the trucks than it is in these cars. It's easier to see in the Xfinities than it is in these cars. It's just something about that big spoiler and the way these cars are built. It's just so hard to see once you're tucked in. We saw Alex Princeton and his group, and even though there were only 2 lead lap cars that came to pit road that time, they had a big group of lap down cars that came down with them. That might give them an advantage. We'll have to wait and see how that plays out with their stop. But now you got Cameron Stone, Jonathan Delaney, and Kevin Steele all alone at the front. They have a 7.5 second lead over Adam Benefiel. And, it's the pack's broken up, and that second group has been together for a while, but their problem has been they have not managed to stay single file and keep things going the right way to gain any ground. So it'll be interesting to see. And if this thing plays out, if nobody gains or loses any ground here, you could be looking at roughly the finishing order with these groups of packs. And now that they're all split up again, we may not see a caution tonight. This might be a green flag except for the stage breaks, and that's definitely interesting for Daytona, but it's definitely the way everybody wanted the night to come out, at least.
Yeah, the drivers for sure. I don't think anybody wants to bring home a wrecked race car, but I tell you what, if it does go green all the way, that'll be one of the most surprising things in my history of broadcasting races. I'm not sure I've ever seen a plate track at least a full-length race at a plate track go completely caution-free, minus the stages. So that's absolutely crazy. And unfortunately, it looks like Sean O'Brien Jr. was unable to cling on to that draft. He just barely lost it. And that put him back in that second pack, which we kind of mentioned. That was his fallback. That was like, if something went wrong, he's got that second pack. And he did. He merged right in with him. He's behind White in the number 70. Adam Benefiel is up there in fourth, like you mentioned. But one thing on the scoring pylon that stands out as an oddity to me, maybe I just missed something, but Bryson Hixenbaugh in the 63 is one lap down currently. And I'm not sure, something had to have went wrong, either a penalty or a bad pit road entry, but he was running bumper to bumper with Benefiel, who's currently fourth. So I got to wonder what happened to the 63 that put him a lap down.
Well, based on his pit time, he was on pit road about 5 seconds longer than anybody else. That's not enough for any particular penalty, but it could be a situation where he overshot his pit stall and then had to back up, lost a lot of ground there, and then lost the pack he was with. So that definitely puts him at a disadvantage. He is the first car one lap down, so if a caution comes out, he'll be back on the lead lap. But right now, the way things are going, he's going to be finishing in about 14th place as they run. He's in 14th, the first car one lap down, and definitely not the way he wanted the night to go. And here at Daytona, the smallest mistake on pit road, as we've seen tonight, can have huge repercussions.
Oh, yeah, it's such a long pit road exit. If you have a little bit of a mistake on your pit lane and you don't have that momentum coming out, you got a long drive back to the track where everybody else is already getting up to speed. So it really adds up. And that may be what happened to Bryson. Again, we're unsure, but it's just really interesting to see. And I've always told Bryson, I never understood why he took the strategy of hanging back. It never really seemed to work out for him. And I don't mean to give an I told you so to an old friend, but it's kind of an I told you so to an old friend, as he is running one lap down right now. We'll see if he can get a caution and make the recovery. Meanwhile, up front, 57, Cameron Stone still leading the way. And, man, these laps are winding down, 19 to go. Now, you mentioned, Doug, that you really kind of need multiple cars to make a move. No one car, no two cars can really jump out and make the pass. The parachute is too big, and the leader's going to be able to make a block. So the question is, you're in this lead pack. You've only got 3 cars. You can't guarantee that the guy behind you is going to work with you if you're Jonathan Delaney. Or even if you're Kevin Steele, you can't guarantee that Jonathan Delaney is going to jump out in front of you. What do you do as a driver? What do you have to do to try to make a swing at it and try to pass the leader?
You really got to hope that lead car bobbles in a corner, gets too high, and you see the 57th a little bit higher as he goes through 1 and 2 this time on corner entry. You've got to wait for the perfect time for him to go a little bit high and be able to stick that nose up underneath enough that his spotter's telling him, hey, there's a car inside, so he has to stay up high, and he gets the parachute. You've got the help. If you go to the high side alone, you're going to go backwards, and you know what? He's not going to get help from Kevin Steele if it comes down to a last lap move. So he's going to have to make something happen up at the front, because he's not going to be able to jump to the high side.
Right. I mean, Kevin has nothing to gain there. If he pushes Jonathan Delaney to the win, he's still not going to get the win for himself. At best, he's going to get second place and pass his teammate. But that's not really worth pushing somebody else to the lead. So he's probably more than content with where he is. He's got his teammate running up there in the lead. A third place finish is a good points day. He's just, that's what he's here for. He's good for good points days. That's why we call him Kevin Consistency Steele. He might not get all the wins in the world, and he may not be leading every lap, but at the end of the day, he's always haunting that top 5 somewhere around there and just picking up points left and right. So that's kind of his forte. And you're right. Jonathan can't rely on him. It's just not going to happen. So I would say you're right. Waiting for a bobble is probably the best thing to do. But short of that, I'd say Jonathan's only hope is to just hang really far back with a few laps to go and hope that maybe by some chance, if the racing gods smile upon him, he could get a long run that draft and just get enough speed to just stick the nose right up against the quarter panel of that 57 and give him that side draft and kind of split the parachute between them.
Yeah, and looked like he almost got it. You saw the way the 57 came off of turn 2 a little bit higher. That's what Delaney's got to have happen in front of him, and he's got to take advantage the second it happens. Sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't, but they're going to come into lap traffic too. And this lap traffic is in packs. And another interesting fact is that second group led by Adam Benefil, they are still 7 3/4 seconds back. They're not really gaining any significant ground, even though this is only a really a 4-car pack because they've got a lap car with them. As they get some of these lap cars hooked back up with them, some of these guys might be able to get a little help from them to make a move at the end of the race, but it's going to be late in the race, and these lap cars are battling each other as well. And of course, anytime you're the faster pack coming up on a slower car, you've got a risk of an incident.
Absolutely. It could go either way when you get up to the lap cars, and it looks like as they get around Damaris Hickenbottom there, that is another Apex driver, so he's not going to give him too much of a hard time. So he's going to hold his line down low, and he's going to let them go on board with Jonathan Delaney. And this is a front row view as to what it's like to navigate traffic here at Daytona International. Much narrower track than Talladega, which kind of compounds the fear. I mean, it used to be a little wider, but of course those safer barriers jet out and they remove a good foot or two of track width. And you can get a little claustrophobic as you pass this lap traffic. I mean, some of these drivers have real spotters that are in their team chats or in their, radio chat on iRacing telling them live time like what's going on. Some of these guys are using the game spotter. And I think we all know that the spotter on iRacing isn't always the quickest on the draw. So it can get real scary going side by side at a narrow track like Daytona.
Yeah, and there's a lot of additional spotter packs and crew chiefs and other apps, and some guys, I've seen a lot of guys that use a iRacing spotter and a crew chief app and have a live spotter, especially when you're talking about at the pro levels. And let's be honest, a lot of these guys that are in this race are at that high level. So, you're seeing some of the best drivers on iRacing going at it. They're using every tool available to them, and even still, sometimes it's not going to be enough, especially when you come up on an unpredictable lap car. You don't know if they're damaged, and you've just got to play it extremely safe out there.
Absolutely, and that was Damaris Hickenbottom right at the top of the screen. He dove down pit road, so I almost thought he might ride around with his Apex teammates there, lend a hand, with the drafting, but he apparently had not come down pit road or felt that he needed to, and so he peeled off, and he is going to leave this pack to do what it may. And these lap cars behind them, they are managing to cling on to that draft, so we got a 5-car pack now. Of course, only really 3 for position. But yeah, any added draft is definitely good. And, that kind of changes up the dynamic. Before we didn't have enough cars for anyone to make a move, but now we might, and you can't guarantee that a lap car is going to push anybody to the lead. But I've been in that situation. I was in a public race at just a regular public scheduled race at Talladega one time. And I was second place, and the guy behind me was 2 laps down. For whatever reason, he went with me. He pushed me to the win. He had no reason to, but he did. And so sometimes that kind of thing happens. And the more cars they pick up in this pack, the more of a chance that drivers like Jonathan Delaney and Kevin Steele really have at making a pass on this 57 machine.
Yeah, and Jonathan Delaney's sitting back there. If he's got a live spotter, he's telling his spotter, hey, go talk to this person. Hey, go talk to this person. Hey, go talk to this person. Get me some help. If not, you've just got to go with any goodwill you can get as they come back around. And is that who? That's the car that pitted just a lap ago, I do believe, as they come around to pick him back up. So there you go. They might have a teammate with them, and then having the teammate, if you can get one of those lap cars engaged and you guys make your way to the front, there is your best shot here tonight. But we see a lap car just dive out of line there, might be struggling with some handling issues. That was kind of a peculiar move.
Yeah, that didn't look intentional. That looked like he felt the car getting out from under him, so he straightened up the wheel and he let it kind of shoot up high out of the corner, which it looks abrupt, but that's generally, if you feel that car getting loose, that's the best thing to do, is just straighten out the wheel. And as long as there ain't nobody above you, generally you have time to catch that car, and it's a whole lot better than just pinching that steering wheel down to the left and spinning. So good save there by that driver, and Damaris Hickenbottom is going to stay with this pack, I believe. He's going to just barely be in their draft. And if you can get up to him, like you said, having that teammate, having multiple lappers up there to kind of help the fray, and we have a caution, as you said. Well, that changes everything. That's the number 27 machine That, man, I'm no strategist, but I feel like I have no idea what I'd do as a driver right now.
Well, I can tell you that yeah, the top group really, really needs to just stay out. The die is more or less cast for these guys, so they're gonna have to stay out and see what can happen as they come to. Oh, he just got pushed and got sideways, back end into the wall, spins around, manages to keep it pretty clean. I don't think he took that hard of a hit into the wall. He might actually be okay.
Yeah, I think he can get that thing back out there. He's all right. He got a push from the mellow yellow machine. Got a little bit sideways. Yeah, he didn't even get into the wall. Our rear bumper cam there was real close. It was scary. But he's going to be all right. So that's always a good thing whenever you get turned at Daytona and you're able to drive away. Pretty much no worse for wear. As we take another view of it, this is the blimp camera or the helicopter camera. So he just gets a little squirrely through the grass. I'm really, look at that. That is some driving right there, Doug. He got on the throttle because he knew the rear end was going towards the wall. He got on the throttle to keep it off the wall. And as soon as that momentum shifted down towards the infield, he locked up the tires like he should. That was quick thinking.
It really was. That's an amazing save. A great move by the driver that just manages to hold on to this and will be able to stay out on track. So he'll be looking for the mellow yellow car, I bet, before the night's out. But, you know, the one guy that really did not want to see this late race caution is Cameron Stone. That group had an 8-second lead once they got those lap cars put back together. They started pulling away from the second group again. Now this restart is going to have all the lead lap cars together. One car, I believe Bryson Hicksonbaugh should get his lap back as well. So you're going to have a few more cars on the lead lap and a lot more chaos. A late race caution always brings a lot of chaos.
It really does, and the mindset has shifted, right? So on the previous restarts, we had plenty of laps left, and most of these drivers were just focused on, all right, I know the bottom is the faster lane, that's where I want to be, so I'm trying to find my lot in line. Where is the first gap wide enough for me to shove my car down in there and take my place in line? They weren't really focused on gaining position or passing anybody. They just wanted to get to the bottom. Now, we only have a few laps remaining, and the focus has shifted from I need to get to the bottom to I need to get to the front. And when you got drivers that are hungry to get to the front, and you're this close to the end of the event, and you got drivers like Jonathan Delaney, who, you know, he really needs this good run tonight to get the regular season championship, to take the lead for that from Bryson, especially with how Cameron Stone, who was third in the regular season points standings, is currently leading the race, and he's won both stages. You know, he needs this good finish. So you know he's going to be aggressive. You know Kevin Steele is going to be aggressive. It's going to be absolute chaos on this restart as everybody scrambles for track position.
Yeah, and you got a lot of guys from eighth that were in eighth place on back that have come to pit road. So they're going to have 4 fresh tires. They're going to be able to maneuver through the traffic a lot easier versus these guys up at the front. They also know, guys like Jonathan Delaney knows, hey, if I go to the high side, somebody's going to go with me now. It's just a question of how close they're going to be, how quickly they get to him, and how much of a push he can get. Everybody's going to be trying to go for that lead from the green flag drop until the end, and you're going to have help from everywhere. Probably in a few occasions, you're going to have a little too much help down the straightaway, a little too much bumping. And, you know, this is the kind of situation that really brings out the big one. This could be, you know, we could see it on the first green flag lap as they're coming up to speed. And, you know, it takes over a lap, usually a lap and a half, to get these cars up to full speed. But by the time they hit the end of the back straightaway, 180 miles an hour, and they're going to keep working up that speed, and things are going to get really, really exciting, both in the car and for us to watch.
Absolutely. And, you know, you mentioned getting too much of a bump. I don't think there is a scarier feeling in all of plate racing than looking in your rearview mirror and seeing a driver who's going 15 miles an hour faster than you, and they're not trying to pass you. You know they're going to push you. And when their bumper makes contact, you're white-knuckling that steering wheel, holding on for dear life, and hoping that it goes your way.
Yeah, if they're not perfectly lined up, it never goes your way. If they are lined up and you can hold the wheel straight and the jolt isn't too bad, the only thing that helps there is there's a little bubble of air as that car approaches you. So you get a mile or two an hour more right before they hit you. But once they hit you, you're in for a roller coaster ride until everybody's at the same speed. And that's when things get exciting. Although, coming down to that final lap, if Jonathan Delaney and Cameron Stone are still side by side, we could see a situation where they're calling, "Hey, hit me as hard as you can. I need to win here." That
I apologize there, and more technical difficulties. Could definitely be the case, especially on this late restart. As Space Truck is now making their left-hand turn. And here we go. 6 to go at Daytona International Speedway, and Cameron Stone gets a good jump. He's going to dive down to the bottom lane and go ahead and pick up Jonathan Delaney as they work together so well in that top line. A little bit disorganized there, Doug.
definitely was, as a bunch of guys immediately jumped to the bottom line. With 5 laps to go, a lot of these guys are just going to go for everything. They're going to have to build up the speed and then go for it. That's probably what the guys that jumped down to the bottom and slotted themselves in were doing. They just want to get up to speed as quickly as possible and then make their march to the front. Cameron Stone has had some epic restarts tonight. He has put himself in position to be up front, but not so far up front that he gets run over once they get up to speed. So he is restarting perfectly. Now the question becomes, does he, how long before everybody behind him starts to try and get around him, how much help he has, and how much blocking he can do?
And one driver behind him that is definitely hungry for a win is Bryce Hoffman. He's winless this season. Again, he is retiring at the end of the season. But if you got a win, I believe that would lock him into the playoffs. I believe he's met the minimum requirements for the amount of races you have to run, and he would be enough in points that he'd be able to get that lock in should he win here at Daytona. And I'm sure he wants to get that playoff position, as he is just right on the bumper of that 65. He's got a few cars to get around. He's running P6 right now. But that is more than doable. I mean, you can pass. You get the help you need. You can pass a good amount of cars at these play tracks. Now, also, one thing I want to mention, a big benefactor of that yellow flag that we got, Bryson Hixenbaugh. He is currently running 14th, just like he was before, but now, instead of being 1 lap down, he is currently running 2 seconds back. So he's on the lead lap. He has a chance at this. If things get crazy at the end and the cars in front of him wreck, he's right back in the game. So an absolute lucky break for a driver that I think most of us were kind of counting as down and out for a little while there.
Another huge benefactor is 5th place Sean O'Brien, who his pit strategy, he still managed to stay in that second group, and he was still in the top 10, but now he has an opportunity at the win. He was obviously pretty fast on older tires. He was managing to hold on to that group and still compete. So it'll be interesting to see. But now we're going to get popsicle sticks in the air, 2 to go, and nobody has made a move yet. That is, well, no, I spoke too soon. We've got a couple. They slide back into line, but it looks like some of these guys are going to start getting a little racy here.
Absolutely. When the laps wind down, you don't want to be the guy that's just content riding in line. Benefield definitely contemplating trying to make a pass, trying to figure out where he can go or what he can do. And he's got a big shove coming from the number 65, Sean O'Brien Jr., but it's going to be tough if he can't quite get that help. And here he goes, back up at the top line, and Sean doesn't take it. Contact nearly. That was, I don't think you could have put a piece of paper between those guys. As the white flag flies, Benefield goes back to the high line, and he does not have any help.
Really surprised he made that move and nobody went with him, and now he is going backwards. Now these guys behind, they have one shot at making a move at some point in this race. Their best opportunity is off turn 4, and as it looks like John Delaney is really pushing the 57. He is right on the bumper, pushing him down. I don't think Delaney's going to make a move. I think he's just going to help the 57 get the win here.
Gonna have to wait and see as they come through 3 and 4 for the final time. What does Delaney do? That's his future boss right in front of him, driving towards that checkered flag. Can he claim it from him here at Daytona? He makes the move. He's looking up high. Side draft. They're going to be drag racing to the line. Whoa, contact is made, and Cameron Stone wins in a 3-wide photo finish. The field piling in behind him, one car nearly flipping upside down. What a finish.
That was definitely unexpected. It looked like Jonathan Delaney was going to help his future boss there to the end of the race, but at the last minute made the move, had a little bit of a draft, but up there on the high side just did not have enough help. It would have taken one car giving him just a smidge of a push for him to take that win, but even still, what a close second. According to the scoring, it looks like the difference could be measured in thousandths of a second.
Absolutely nail-biting finish. I mean, like you said, thousandths of a second. Not very often you see a race come down to quite that difference. I mean, especially at a track like this where the speeds are so high and it's so easy to kind of separate yourself from one another. It's crazy to see. But Cameron Stone, I'm sure he is relieved to get this win. At this point in the season, you know, he told me he doesn't have as many wins as he had last year at this point. So he wanted to start stacking up some wins, carry some momentum into the playoffs. And a near flawless run here at Daytona, that's a pretty good way to build up momentum as he's going to burn it to the ground with his team.
Yeah, he's got, this will make race win number 2 of the season. Plus he got a stage win tonight as well. So he came out really ahead on tonight. Great points night overall and a great way to finish the regular season here at Daytona. Heck of a run, great strategy moves, and just great running overall.
Absolutely. So we got our final running order. I'll go ahead and take 1 through 10 and hand it off to you, Doug. Cameron Stone's going to walk away your winner tonight, right in front of his future driver, Jonathan Delaney, with an impressive second-place finish, 5 thousandths of a second behind. Kevin Steele in third. Sean O'Brien, with some incredible strategy, is going to bring it home at P4. Bryce Hoffman with an impressive top 5 after a season that could only really be described as a struggle. This is a comeback for sure. Matt White in the number 7. He brings it home 6th. Preston McRae 7th. Ryan Samuelson 8th. Patrick Much 9th. Running at your top 10 is Lucas Hoytsma.
11th is Alex Princeton. Bryson Hicksonball makes a huge comeback tonight, finishing in 12th. 13th was Adam Benefeld. 14th was Devin Medeiros. Brandon Pierce comes home 15th. Matthew Gaskins in 16th. Kyle Amon is 17th. Dylan Kritz 18th. Jason Chambers 19th. And Damaris Hickenbottom comes home 20th.
And the rest of your field from Damaris on back is going to be Andrew Russo in 21st. Dalton Mobley 4 laps down at P22. Jason S. Taylor 6 laps down in 23rd. Dakota Knoll behind him. Randy Drumhiller, Chad Sanner, RJ Root, Josh Ward, Brandon White, Cody Strom, Brian Branham, and Chad Edwards is going to round out your 32-car field, 156 laps down. All right, so now we're going to try and locate our top 3. We're going to have a word with them, if we can get them into the waiting room. Of course, some of these drivers still celebrating, I'm sure. So we're going to throw the mics over to Cole, get these drivers lined up for the interviews. Don't go anywhere. Our post-race coverage will return momentarily. All right, Kevin Steele, you got a copy?
Yes.
I had to drag you down here kicking and screaming. It seemed like you just went straight to the motor coach slot, but you're not getting out of the interview that easy, Kevin. All right.
I completely forgot. My bad.
Oh, man. Well, you got a great run tonight. You were up front working with your teammate Cameron Stone and also Jonathan Delaney all night long. Walk me through your mindset in this race. I mean, it was a really abnormal plate race, I'd say. Only one caution for cause, kind of a lot of single file, taking it easy. What was it like navigating this track tonight?
Yeah, I mean, we knew at Talladega earlier in the year, the changes that they made to this package just made it so difficult to pass that track position. It sounds ridiculous, but track position is more important on plate tracks now than it is at Martinsville or even road courses. Like, you just need to stay at the front no matter what. And I think there in stage one, John sped or something. He made a mistake on pit road, and I ended up behind Stone, and we just had a good gap on everybody, and then we kind of planned it out with our tape and everything like that we would just have the perfect combination where John could push him and I could push John, and we were now that it's over, I'm kind of glad that caution came out so that the ending was a little more exciting, because it was going to be pretty boring, because we just had a really good plan and it worked perfectly, and we had 3 really fast cars. So I apologize if that wasn't that great of a show on TV, but we ended up having some fun just strategizing and everything.
Yeah, definitely a lot of strategy tonight. Now, coming down to the end of the race, you're running third, you got Delaney in front of you, and for a while before that caution, it seemed like you weren't going to have enough help to really make a move, even if you wanted to. I mean, you could step out and try to pass Delaney and Stone, but ultimately that parachute would be deployed, and it didn't really seem like it would go anywhere. Then that caution comes out, and now you got a lot of cars behind you that could potentially help push you up front. What was it going to take for you to try and make that move on Cameron Stone?
Well, honestly, I mean, it's been so long since Apex got a win. I wasn't planning on making a move on Stone. We had worked so well together, and like you said, I mean, if you move out, you're done. And I mean, I had Adam behind me for a while, and we all knew he was really taped up, so I knew he was going to overheat. And then Sean O'Brien was behind me after that, and I knew he wanted to win this race really bad, but he was also in a good position in points. So I figured if I moved out to try and get around John, then he would probably go to the inside of me, and then that's pretty much game over for me. So I was basically just glued to John's bumper until he went to try and pass Cam. Then I went to Cam's bumper.
All right, teamwork makes the dream work. Well, before we let you go, Kevin, is there anybody you'd like to shout out or thank?
Yeah, I want to thank my parents. Sorry if you guys got bored staying up watching the Follow the Leader, but that's just the package that we got right now. Hopefully we get some updates for Talladega, so it's a little more exciting, get a little bit back more to pack racing and everything. So yeah, thanks to my parents, thanks to everybody at Apex. Congrats to Cam Stone, he deserves it. He's had a heck of bad luck at these plate races, and he's finally got one, so I'm really happy for him. Thanks to John for working with us all night. Thanks to you guys for hanging in there. Hopefully the middle of that race wasn't too boring for you, but hopefully I had some fun.
All right, well, congratulations on your podium finish, and we'll talk to you next week, Kevin.
Thanks, buddy.
All right, that was third place finisher Kevin Steele. Now I'm going to throw it to Doug Burns. He's sitting trackside. The second place finisher, John Delaney.
Hey, John, this is Doug in the booth. You got me?
Yes, I do.
Hey, man. Problems early on, but you managed to rally for a great second place finish, almost getting the win there at the line.
Yeah, we had started on pole. We were leading the first 25 some laps. Then coming down pit road, the green flag pit stop, I sped, just overshot it. Didn't hit my marks right, and so we sped on pit road. I was luckily able to stay ahead of the leader and be able to stay on the lead lap though, so that was really nice. We were for stage 2. We started around like 13th, worked our way up to like 10th or so before we pitted. We came down pit road, cut it pretty much just in half like we did the first stage, and I was able to get back up to second. So I was in really good shape there. I was glad I was able to make up all those spots on pit road and green flag pit stops. And then the last stage there, pretty much same plan as the other stages. Just cut it right in half or pit as early as possible. And that's what we did. We were able to pit early,
We were able to break the draft from the people behind us and the black flag guys. And I mean, it was, I think, no matter what, I was going to have a top 3 or top 5. So I was really, just comfortable riding behind Cam till that, that last lap. And, the opportunity arose to, pass him, and I tried. I side drafted him coming off of 4. I broke the bubble so I could do that. I was ahead of him for like a second or two, and coming across the line, Cam just had more help than me, and we actually we banged some doors. We made some contact. So I actually wasn't physical contact. We had some netcode involved, but I think if we wouldn't have made contact, I think I might have been able to edge him out. But I had a blast. That was very fun. These plate tracks, you got to really stay up front. You can't lose the main pack. The track position is very, very important. So I was very glad I had the pole, and I'm glad I made up all those spots back up again.
You had to be a little bit frustrated when that last caution came out.
Yeah, I was. I was a little worried because I knew Adam was going to be in the mix now, and if he had some help, it's hard to get the top going, but I knew he was going to be very aggressive, so I was always keeping an eye on him. But yeah, I wasn't real too happy about the caution, but I had a blast.
You came out in second place and a heck of a run as well. Anybody you'd like to thank?
Yeah, I'd like to thank you guys for broadcasting. I'd like to thank everyone racing this league, the admins. They do an awesome job. Coming out here every week and having an awesome race every week. So, and we're getting into the playoffs next week's Darlington. I'm ready. I'm pretty sure 99% chance I think I won the regular season championship, so I'm happy about that. That's going to give me a lot of momentum going into the playoffs. I'd like to thank everyone at Great Lakes Motorsports, Crixus Motorsports, and esports racing groups for all the help they did this week on the set and all that stuff. I'd like to thank my parents, brother, grandma, my aunt, and Bob for watching. So, and that is all I got for you guys.
All right, man. Congratulations. A great finish and definitely a great points night.
Yep. Thank you.
All right, there was second place finisher John Delaney. Seemed pretty excited about that finish, and I mean, how could you not be? That was a definite adrenaline pumping finish. You get side by side, door slam into the line. You gotta love it. Now we're gonna go ahead and have a word with Cameron Stone. You got a copy?
Yes, sir.
Well, Cam, you told me you were looking to get some wins late into the season, carry some momentum into the playoffs, and here you are. You pulled it off. How'd you do it?
Well, first of all, I got to thank the 2 guys I was working with all night. Seems like every time we come to a super speedway, me and John are able to find each other, and that's the 1-2 punch that I always need to run good in these races. Kevin, the last couple times we've been at Daytona, this time in the 500, he's done an incredible job just keeping the car clean and keeping us away from anybody making runs on the outside. So, when I got guys like that know what they're doing behind me, it makes my job a whole lot easier out front. So, yeah, but we won 5 of the 6 stages at Daytona this year, and I was about 3/4 of a mile from winning the 500 too, so pretty damn close to sweeping every stage at Daytona. So I'll definitely take this. I'm glad I finally got a win here. I thought I was snake bit, but hopefully this gives us some good momentum. We'll get hot in the playoffs like we did last year. That's really all we can look for at this point.
Now I gotta ask, you had that 3-car breakaway. You had Kevin Steele and Jonathan Delaney behind you. You had quite a big gap to any cars that would have been for position. And it seemed like you were pretty much comfortably driving to the win at that point. I mean, even if John or Kevin had really made a move, there wasn't enough cars to get in line and push them past you. It seemed like it would have been fairly easy to throw the block and just drive to the win. And then that caution comes out. And suddenly that security, that safety of not having a bunch of cars to try and defend from, that's gone. So walk me through what you were thinking when that yellow flag came out.
I was cursing God. I was very upset. I thought I feel like I've lost a lot of races this year in various different ways that I had a chance to win and just didn't get it done. So, I was scared that was going to happen again. And with 5 to go, I mean, you never really know. We stuck with what had worked. I kept going to the high side, and John let me in front of him, and Kevin was already on his bumper the way we lined up. So we just had to go with that and hope that nobody went with Adam on the outside. Luckily, the point situation for O'Brien kind of put him in a box where he wasn't able to pull out, and anybody else back there probably wouldn't have been enough to push him through. So just real lucky that everything worked out the way it did, because with 5 to go at these super speedways, you never know what's going to happen.
No, you don't. And I got to ask one final question. We talked to Kevin after the race, and he said that in his mind, he more than likely never really wanted to make the move on you. He figured he would just push you to the win because it's been so long since Apex got a win, and he just wanted to, get a win for the team. He said you deserved it. But, you are going to your own team next year. You're leaving. And I got to wonder, was that ever something in your mind you're thinking, is Kevin really going to work with me? Was there any amount of mistrust between you two, or has the bad blood sort of been set aside and you guys were just kind of in sync?
I'm not sure if it was any mistrust on my part. Me personally, I understand how most racers think. Like, if you got a chance to go get the win, you got to go for it. So I'm glad that Kevin took the team owner stance on that. He did it in the 500 too, and it worked out for him. So I guess sticking to the plan has paid off for him already, with him winning the 500. So I guess this was his way of giving one back. So really appreciate him for that. And with John, I knew John was going to pull out and go for it. That was
your future
always
driver.
in the back of my mind. Yeah. I mean, like I'm saying, if you're there, well, this is the same conversation we had at Darlington when, I went for a move that I definitely shouldn't have, but
when you committed third-degree manslaughter, yeah, I remember.
Yes, I definitely shouldn't have done that, but I mean, with the wins right there in front of you, if you want it bad enough, you're going to go for it. So I knew John was going to pull out and try to make the run. I'm glad Kevin was there too. I knew Kevin wouldn't go with John in that situation. So once I saw John had pulled out, my only course of action was to just let Kevin get to my bumper, give me the shot, and then side draft John to the line, and that worked out. I guess that was, I don't know, it might be the closest finish we've had in the league. So that was pretty awesome. But definitely gotta, this whole race, I just gotta dedicate this to the guys that helped me get it. John and Kevin were awesome all night.
Absolutely. Well, congratulations on your win. And does anybody like to shout out or thank?
Always, man. Got to shout out Mom and Dad. I know they're watching. They always get real excited for the races. We finally won again. I don't suck. I'm not washed. So y'all don't have to worry about making another child or whatever. I'm not that much of a disappointment. Let's see. I guess Megan and Conrad, hopefully they're watching. I know I talked to Conrad earlier, so hope y'all enjoyed that. Hope everybody enjoyed watching. Yeah, I know. I heard it just blow up. That sucks. I hope everybody enjoyed the race. I know the Super Speedway package has gotten kind of neutered by iRacing here lately, and it's not really beneficial to run too wide anymore. So I'm sure most of that race was a snooze fest. So sorry for that, but at least the finish was really good. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and thank y'all for the great broadcast. Shout out to Mountain Dew. Mountain Dew goes 1-2 in the Soda Wars 400. So whoever picked Mountain Dew is the winner tonight. I guess they'll make a little money on the prop bet. But yeah, man, that was awesome. Feels great. Got to keep the momentum going, get hot at the right time, and hopefully we can back the championship up from last year.
Absolutely. All right. Well, hopefully we're talking under similar circumstances, and thanks for your time, Cam.
Thank you, bud.
That was your race winner, Cameron Stone. Well, Doug, it was an interesting race. Maybe not the most action-packed, but definitely interesting in its own right. You just don't see plate races this caution-free in general, and especially with this few lead changes, it was kind of an anomaly, I would say. And then, of course, the finish was an absolute chaotic mess of cars everywhere. It was very fun to watch. You got any post-race thoughts?
Yeah, just that it was really impressive to see everybody take the time and the patience and keep it green. It was the strategy plays were extremely interesting and definitely awesome to any chance you get to watch a 100% race on iRacing and see the different strategies, everything that we saw play out tonight. It definitely could help some guys in the future when iRacing goes to Daytona. They might learn something tonight. So definitely a really cool race, and yeah, it got a little slow mid-race, but the other parts of it definitely made up for it.
I'd have to agree. All right, I've been Andre Granbush with Doug Burns and, of course, producer Carlos Acosta, the man who makes it happen in the booth there, pushing the buttons, working the cameras, doing all the stuff that I'm not good enough to do. So thanks for everybody who tuned in and watched the entirety of this event, and hopefully we'll see you next week.